And it's time to start the pre-show, everyone. Hello, it's our pre-show for our 220-1101 Core 1A Plus study group. Let's go to the stream health. Stream is healthy. It has been. We're going to hope it continues to be that way. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We got about 10 minutes until we get started. This is our pre-show where I am checking recordings. That one's running. This is streaming. Looks good. 3% is the number we want. That's the right number. Everything with cameras is looking all right. And now it's just about making sure we have everything ready for the top of the hour. So thanks for joining us for the pre-show. Hope everybody's doing well. I see some folks already in the chat room. Hello, chat room. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you, YouTube, for telling me that I'm live. That's always useful. And Malk is here from St. Vincent. Welcome. Thanks for being here again. Good to see everyone. Hope things are fine in St. Vincent. South Africa is here. Puerto Rico is here. Where in Puerto Rico? I need to know. That used to be my territory. I used to cover South Florida, South Carolina, and what it really is the Caribbean, but it mostly was Puerto Rico. What was difficult was that the folks in the U.S. didn't understand that the Caribbean was different countries. And so they would tell me, you need to go there and have some meetings. And I said, well, I need to get, since I'm going for meetings, I need to get a visa. And they said, a credit card? I'm like, no, you need to get permission from the country to go in and work there. And they didn't understand the concept of that. So that's how that one often went. Puerto Rico, obviously, different scenario. In fact, at the time, did not need a passport. I just walked in with my driver's license, and I was good to go. Now I think, are they still requiring? At one point, they were requiring you to have a passport for Puerto Rico. They might have changed that in the meantime. That was when you could travel to Canada with just a driver's license. Oh, those were the days. That was good times. Not anymore. Hello, Jamaica and Newport News, Virginia, and Scotland. So good to have everyone here. I need to get back to Scotland. That place is awesome. I loved that trip. San Antonio is here in Italy. Welcome. Houston, Texas. Welcome, Texas. I promise not to mess with you. So Real ID works. Yeah, that's pretty much everybody except Oklahoma and Oregon still are not Real ID compliant. How you like that? So still 2 states still not completely compliant in this country with Real ID. We're still working on it. There's a lot of moving parts there. It takes a long time to get everything going. Hello, Tacoma, Washington, or is it Washington? Fort Worth is here in Egypt and West Virginia and Michigan. Thanks for being here. Oklahoma City in the house. Welcome. Dallas, Texas in my house, apparently. Is all the material teaching updated for 2023 test taking? I guess, sure. The years don't matter. What's important is the version of the exam. So the 220-1101 is the latest version of the Core 1 exam, and that's the one on my website. So things don't change when January 1 hits. You don't have a big change happening. Generally, once an exam is sent or available to the public, it stays that way for about 3.5 years. So they don't update it. After 3.5 years, then a new version of the exam is released and the number changes. So if you see everything that you see that says 220-1101 and 220-1102 are updated for the latest version of the CompTIA A Plus exams. So that's what you should be looking for. If anything says we're updated for 2023, well, you were updated for 2022 as well. You didn't change anything. So I guess I should answer your question. Yes, it's all updated for 2023. I didn't change anything. Nothing's different than 2022. It's exactly the same as when it was released in October of last year. So that's one that I guess I could put it on there, but I see people doing that on their videos. This is updated for 2023, except nothing was updated for 2023. It's just a way to get your eyeballs. It's just a way to fool you into thinking they did something, but they did nothing. And they're trying to tell you they did. So that's what that's about. Always check the number of the exam. It should match the number of the study materials that you are using, and you're fine. So that's what we should do. Oh boy. We've got CompTIA 808 in the chat. Passed your Security Plus on the 28th. Got the trifecta. Congratulations on your Security Plus, and obviously your A Plus and Network Plus as well. CompTIA 808 says used your notes along with your videos for all 3 certs, and we sure appreciate that. Thank you so much. That is that's very kind for you to stop by and say hello, and it makes me feel good that you got that trifecta in your pocket, which is perhaps even the most important thing. Ivan says, does your setup have anything from Blackmagic? Almost everything I have in here is Blackmagic. Blackmagic Designs is a company that makes audio and video production, broadcast production equipment. And the Blackmagic Design Television Studio 4K is what we are using as our primary video switcher. And pretty much all of the adapters that I use to convert between HDMI and SDI, and then SDI back to HDMI, are also all Blackmagic design. I also have a matrix switch that I use to move the video around in different ways. I've got the recorders that I'm using down here. You can see the Cylons going. Those Cylons are Blackmagic design. I've got all kinds of Blackmagic. The streamer that I'm using, this thing up here, that's all Blackmagic. You can even see it. It says right there, Blackmagic. No, it doesn't. It says Professor Messer. Changed the name. Where does it say? It had it on there. There it is up there on that corner. You can't see that corner. It's too high. So I can see it. What? That's they do pretty good stuff. You know, there's always idiosyncrasies. There's always things you wish were different or would be better in your scenario. But we've come up with a pretty good overview, a pretty good method of getting data from this analog world into a digital format that I can then post other places. So it works out okay. It does all right. We're getting there. Hello, Kenya and Brooklyn and Magnolia, Texas, Panama City. PC is here. I haven't been to Panama City in a while. I need to get back over there. We used to vacation on Mexico Beach a lot. And Mexico Beach is in Florida, not Mexico. Mexico Beach, devastated by, was it Ivan that came through? One of those bad hurricanes that came through. And we used to, when we go to Mexico Beach, we would always take a day and we'd go to the city, go to PC. You go see a movie or something like that. You pick a rainy day where the beach is no good and you drive over there and go watch a movie in the mall. Back then, you go to the mall, watch a movie. That's what we did. It's all good. Mike says, just passed my 1101. Congratulations. Prepping for 1102. Will this study group help at all with 1102? Or should I skip it and watch your other 1102 videos? This is all focused on 1101 today. So if you want to show up 2 days from now on Thursday is our 1102 study group. That's what that's about. So that will help you. So yes, you're not going to see anything here that's really associated with an 1102. Pretty much, well, not pretty much everything. Everything here is 1101 because it's our 1101 study group. So that's what that's about. Let's get some things together. We got about a minute before we get started. There was a question. Who do I want to win Super Bowl LVII? I don't know. Who's playing? I don't pay attention to that. I have no idea. Go Oilers. Go LA Rams. I don't know. I'm trying to pick all the old ones. That's where I am with that. I pay no attention to any of those things. Is it cold down in Florida? Right now, 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's get things started, though. We need to get things in order. Let's make sure our keynote is working. Green light looks good. That looks good. Let's take our chat and move it over. We're going to move study group content there. We're going to move the chat over here as well. Chat, move, will you? Get over here. There you go. That's nice. I know. I said LA Rams and they realized, wait, are the Bears even staying in Chicago or are they just moving down the street? I think they're just moving down the street, aren't they? It's nothing like that. So I don't know. Cleveland Browns. There's a good one. See? I need to work those in. Go Oilers. I'm glad we're all together on this one. It's top of the hour, everyone. Let's see if I can figure out all of this. Let's get that says I've started. This looks good over here. This could probably be on the next page. This could be there, and let's do a live stream, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the February 2023 Professor Messer Core 1 A+ study group. It's our study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the 220-1101 Core 1 A+ exam objectives. And through the magic of the internet, if you are here live, you can participate along with everybody else, where you can plug in your answers and see just how much you might know about the 220-1101 exam objectives. We have a lot to go through today. I've got all new questions every month, of course. So we've got a lot that's going on with our objectives. One of the things that I think is useful if you are here live is being able to answer the questions as I'm asking them. And the way that you can do that if you are here live is to go to professormesser.com/QA. Just pop open a new browser window, go to that particular URL, and there'll be a question waiting for you on the screen right now. You can also use an app, because of course you can. Go to your favorite app store, and the app that you would like to use is one called the Socrative Student app. There's two Socrative apps, one that's for the teacher, that's me apparently, and then one for the students, that's you apparently. So make sure you get the right one. If you use the app, it will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you spell it right, or you won't be able to see the question that is waiting for you. It's actually a question from last month. We always do a rewind question as our very first question to make sure that you can get into Socrative, make sure you can see the questions that are there, make sure you're able to answer them okay. And the questions that are there, the question you should see if you go to that page is a question that asks, a user's workstation randomly powers off without any error messages or warnings. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Would that be, let's flip it over, hardware diagnostics, check the monitor input source, check available space and defrag, replace the CPU, or replace the BIOS? You've got a few options available to you there. So make sure you have a look at all of those to see what's available and be able to lock in your answer on the page that you're on. So we're going to come back to this question in just a bit to see just how well you might know this particular topic. Well, we do one of these study groups every month. Thank you for being here. If you're watching this live, you can participate with us, but you can also watch on the replay. Our replays are available immediately afterwards on the YouTube. We also have other things going on all the time. If you'd like to keep up with what we're doing, we would love it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Simply go to professormesser.com/YouTube. Click that subscribe button, click the bell. If you like this video, click the thumbs up. Just click a lot of things. Eventually, you'll click the right thing. We also have daily pop quiz questions for A+. I will email those to you directly. There's a link on my website that can get you on our email list. Or you can, of course, visit us on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. That has our daily pop quiz questions. And we also take the same questions and we make them very pretty in Instagram with pretty pictures. Go to professormesser.com/Instagram. You can follow along with us. We've got a lot to go through today. One of the things that we're going to step through is understanding the continuing education units. Sometime in this first hour, I will give you instructions and information on how you could also participate and earn CEUs. Now, if you don't know what a CEU is, you've never worked through a continuing education unit, then this probably doesn't apply to you. But if you've already earned your exam and you're looking to renew your exam, those CEUs can be one of the many methods that you might use to be able to renew your certifications. So keep listening for that. I'll explain more as we get down to when that might happen sometime in this first hour. So keep your ears open and we'll happen to know when that's going to happen. As I mentioned in the pre-show, there are two different exams that you'll need to take for the 220-1101 and 220-1102. These are, by the way, two exams that were released relatively recently, April of 2022. These two exams will probably retire somewhere around October of 2025. So those of you, some folks even asked me in the pre-show, is your information updated for 2023? Yes, it is. It's also updated for 2024 and 2025 already, because the information doesn't change until the exam is retired, until it's updated. So you'll find that the current versions that we have on our website are for the 2201101 and 2201102. Make sure all of your exam information and everything you're studying from matches those specific exam numbers. And then when the exam is retired, there'll be a new set of numbers. So you always know when the exams are updated. You'll be able to know immediately if you're using the right information. There are 2 exams that you need to pass. Both exams are 90 minutes long. They are graded slightly different. You'll need to earn a 675 to pass the 1101, and that's on a scale from 100 to 900. You've also got the 1102. You have to score a little bit better. You have to score 700 whenever you start working on that. The important part is for you to make sure that you have studied for all of those. It's pretty important that you do that. I usually recommend you do these one at a time. So you never want to be in a situation where you're studying for both of those exams at the same time. I guess the only people that really should do that is if you've already been in this industry forever. You happen to know this information, and perhaps you're having to get this certification for some other type of requirement. But for the most of us, for the vast majority of us, and even myself, when I'm taking these exams, I take one at a time. It doesn't make sense to study for both at a time. There's very little overlap between the two. In fact, if you look, you'll notice the topics between both of those are exactly different. They're exactly not the same. If you look at them, very different exams. So the 1101 covers mobile devices, networking hardware, not networking hardware, but networking hardware, virtualization, cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. You'll notice on the 1102, a very different set of topics. So there's very little overlap between these 2 exams. Core 2 covers the operating systems that you might use, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. So that's what you should focus on if you're someone who's looking for really the right information at the right time. Make sure you grab those exam objectives. They'll tell you exactly what you need to know for these exams so that you're familiar with that. We have this video that we do on our live stream is available for you to watch online immediately afterwards. It's automatically provided to YouTube and updated, and it just takes a couple minutes, and it's available for you to watch on the replay. I also make an audio-only version of these for a replay. The audio-only version is available in podcast form. You can find that at professormesser.com/QA. That's where you can obviously go to find everything that you're looking for. I think that's from an audio-only perspective. I have this available for A+, Network+, and Security+. You'll find it all on my podcast page at professormesser.com/podcast. And if there's a podcast streaming service that you have not used, you can, of course, go to the contact on my website. Let me know that there might be one that you use. In fact, this latest week, I added Stitcher to the list, which I think also includes iHeartRadio. So we're constantly adding more and more to the podcast list. If there's a particular podcast provider that I'm not on that you would like me to be on, just let me know. As I mentioned, we have our video replays available immediately afterwards on YouTube. And about a day later, my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this on the replay. Hey, Lori, how's the weekend? This is the only time we ever talk to each other. It's not true. We talk all the time, but she is watching this, hopefully at 2x speed, and going through and putting timestamps on everything that we do. So you're able to find the exact questions, the exact answers, maybe questions people put in the after show. It's all in the YouTube video description. So that's usually added about a day later, and it allows people to find exactly what they're looking for and find it very, very quickly. Also want to let you know that we have a Discord available if you'd like to chat with us. Obviously, we're not live and on YouTube 24 hours a day, but usually there's somebody in the Discord 24 hours a day. You can chat with other folks who are studying for their certification exams, maybe have an ad hoc study session. Lots of things going on there. Make sure you join us. It's a great community at professormesser.com/Discord. It's the place to go. We've also, if you have a look at my website, eventually you're going to need to take your exam. And if you're in the U.S. or Canada or a number of U.S. territories, you can also get a discounted voucher from my site. The discounted voucher is available at professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, why would you pay full price when the discounted version of these same vouchers is available on my website? You can find out more at professormesser.com/vouchers. And since you're there and buying a voucher, I want to, of course, give you even more. So something you won't get on other sites, on other places where you would acquire your voucher, is a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is a set of tips and tricks that I created for taking a CompTIA exam, because I've taken a few of them at this point. And the Exam Hacks ebook is not available for sale. You can't buy it individually. You can only get it with my success bundles or by purchasing a voucher on my site. And of course, it's always a good place to save money. Why pay full price for your voucher? And it helps support what we do at professormesser.com. Learn more at professormesser.com/vouchers. We have a lot to go through, so let's go back to that question that we asked originally. The question was, a user's workstation randomly powers off without any error messages or warnings. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? So this is really where we need to focus on answers, and the options are hardware diagnostics, check the monitor input source, check available space and defrag, replace the CPU, or replace the BIOS. Let's see what you answered. We'll have a look at the results. We can see that 69% of you said hardware diagnostics would be the next best troubleshooting step. 25% of you said check the monitor input source. We've also got 4% that say replace the CPU, 2% say to check available space and defrag the system, and lastly, 0%, nobody said upgrade the BIOS. So that is one, I think, that if you're trying to figure out the best way to go about this particular problem and you've noticed something weird is happening, I think most of you have realized we do not want to go through this process and start changing things. If your system is just randomly shutting down or even giving an error message and then shutting down, you might want to, if you've just made a change, you might want to roll that change back, because that would be an obvious reason for this particular problem to occur. But it's not always obvious. Maybe we didn't make a change. We didn't install any new software. We didn't install any new hardware. So one of the things we can do is to maybe deal with hardware that may have loosened itself due to the thermal changes inside of your system. As things heat up and things cool down, it's possible for individual components to become disconnected or badly connected, so reseating them might be a good idea. But ultimately, if we've made no changes and we really don't think there's any problem with the hardware in our system, we should probably run a hardware diagnostics just to make sure, check everything out, and see if it's doing exactly what we would expect it to do. That's where I would recommend you focus as well, is looking at the hardware. And indeed, most of you said, yep, that's what I think we should do as well, is focus on the hardware. And you'd be absolutely correct. That's what we want to do, is to look at the hardware that we're running and check the diagnostics. Now, why wouldn't we check the monitor input source? 25% of you chose that one. But of course, the monitor input would simply change what's on the screen, or maybe turn the screen into a black screen, or put up a message that says no video input. But this wasn't the problem we were running into. The problem was that the workstation is randomly powering down completely. There's no error messages, no warnings, so checking the monitor input would probably not provide us with anything, because it's not going to tell us what's going on there. It's not going to help us at all when we're trying to step through any of those. So that's what I would, of course, recommend. And in fact, 70% of you say, yes, that's what I would use as well, is this particular monitor hardware diagnostics, not the monitor input. So that's where if anybody is working through there, that's where I would go with this one as well. Well, that gets us, at least everybody's in answering questions. You now can see how you would answer questions in the online Socrative front end. So now let's shift gears a little bit, and instead of a multiple choice-based question like that last one, let's look at a performance-based question. If you've never taken a CompTIA exam before, this is an important thing to remember, is that the first set of questions you get on your exam will not be multiple choice. They will not be, here's a question with multiple choices that you can select from. Instead, you'll get a question that is anything but multiple choice. It might be fill in the blank. It might be a matching question. You might have to put things in a particular order. It might be a drag and drop question. There may be lots of things to do, but the questions you will get will all be topics that come from the exam objectives. So as long as you know the content, as long as you know the objectives, you're going to do fine with these. It's just a different way to ask you the same information. So let's do a performance-based question. Our performance-based question of the month asks, list the type of protocol, TCP or UDP, and the port number. So I have for you 5 different scenarios here. And for these 5 scenarios, I want you to tell me the protocol, TCP or UDP, and perhaps more importantly, the port number as well. These work together. So here are the 5 different scenarios or configurations that we're looking for port numbers. It is control the desktop of a remote Windows laptop. What is the port number that you would use for that? Automatically assign IP addresses to network devices. What port number would be associated with that? Next is copy a file to a Windows share. What port number would you use for that one? Gather performance metrics from a file server. We want to know that as well. And lastly, insecurely connect to a remote console. Insecurely connect to a remote console. What port number would you use with that one? Now, our standing request for any of these questions is we don't want you to answer in the chat room. You want to follow the link that's on your screen. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to visit professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you happen to know. This is more of a fill in the blank. On your exam, it could be a drag and drop. There might be different choices to select. But notice that this is giving us a task and asking us what port number we would commonly see associated with that task. So a little bit different than what I think a lot of people expect on these exams. A lot of people expect simply what I call flashcard questions or trivia questions, where they might ask, here's a protocol, what port number does it use? You'll never see that on an exam. They will never give you anything that easy. Instead, CompTIA wants to see if you understand what's happening behind the scenes. They want you to understand the process of what's going on and not simply memorize a lot of numbers and letters and somehow spit those back out on the exam. So I think this is a pretty good representation of the type of thought process you have to go through during the exam to be able to put these together. Usually it's a multi-step process to get from point A to point B, and this certainly speaks to that. I've been trying to get my iPad to connect back to my laptop. I'm of course always what people normally don't see in the middle of these live streams is there's all kinds of things happening behind the scenes. And today it turns out the iPad's what's broken. So we'll struggle through. It'll be fine. We'll get through all of these. It's more of a nice to have instead of a must have. So it doesn't stop us from doing anything. And to be able to work through those. Hopefully you're familiar with the port numbers. See, a lot of you are starting to put those in, but notice you have to go through each one. Also, by the way, Googling is not going to help you because this is a brand new question that I've never had before anywhere. It's not in Google. It's nowhere else. So this is not something that you can simply find. And obviously on the exam, you don't have any Google. There is no search engine that you can refer to on the exam. Instead, you have to go to a question like this one. Just step through each one of these to be able to be familiar with what's there. It can be very, very useful for breaking those out. This should be a good one as we step through all of these. Obviously, port numbers it's a small section of a small area that's in a larger domain that's part of many other domains. So you might get a port number question on your exam. You might not get any port number questions on your exam. I see often people spend a lot of time on port numbers, but you have to also keep in mind for your studies that everything is proportional. They tell you exactly what percentage of questions is going to be pulled from any particular domain. So you're not guaranteed to have any particular topic on the exam, only a topic that is part of a much larger domain of topics. So it is possible that you could get no port number questions on your exam, or you might get a lot. It just depends on the random number generator and what they decide to give you for your particular sitting. I think that's an important part of this. So hopefully that can give you some insight into how you should be approaching these types of questions. Never spend too much time on any one particular set of topics on the exam. If you find yourself wrapped around the axle and port numbers are not coming to you well and it's too much rote memorization for you, then absolutely skip over it. Come back to it later. Because at the end of the day, at the end of the exam, you may find that there was only one question on port numbers. Or maybe you got lucky and there were no questions on port numbers. Although for me, I'd love some port number questions. It gets embedded into your brain after a while in this business. Let's see how you did with this question. This question asks, list the type of protocol, TCP or UDP, and the port number. We have 5 different circumstances we need to find this on. The first is control the desktop of a remote Windows laptop. The second is to automatically assign IP addresses to network devices. The third is copy a file to a Windows share. The fourth is gather performance metrics from a file server. And lastly, insecurely connect to a remote console. So it's going to be one of those 5. Let's step through all 5 of these and happen to see exactly what this might be. So we're gonna before we do that, I'm gonna wait just a moment for those of you that have been watching this, is that you'll notice you can't really see it on the screen, but folks that have followed us before, we're having a little bit of some names aware, and we'll see if this really comes back. We're just going to sit here patiently for a moment. Sometimes these are very and quickly able to change. So we'll see if this does change and it comes back quickly. I'm just monitoring that cache as we go to see if it happens to be able to break through. But a challenge, of course, with any of these. Packet loss, just that may be something intermittent. So we'll see as we go through here. The cache, though, is on the air. And we'll see what happens this time. We've changed the server on the YouTube side. The cache is still going down, however. It's not a good situation. Now, let's check our cache. We're still at 3%. YouTube server is still got a problem. So that doesn't help at all whenever you work through those. Hopefully this can resolve itself pretty quickly. But obviously, it's a problem. If you're ever wondering where you go with these, that's an issue. So I'm just keep waiting a bit. How's our time? We're already halfway through this. So that doesn't help us at all with the things we're trying to do. So we may have to wait for a different live stream to be able to make this happen. So it's just unfortunate that we have this outage. We might push it until later today to see if we can resolve this problem. And I'm going to check in my area to see if there is a problem with the network connectivity. Sometimes they will tell you on this connection, oh yeah, we've had problems in your area. Here's what we're doing. Here's the problems that we're seeing. The problem, of course, is, and in fact, if I look at these, let's connect. There we go. And of course, this is not the one I am looking for. That doesn't help me. It's a different app. Now we need a different app to do things. I'm getting there. No, there's lots of things that can frustrate me. I'm on the internet. Things go wrong all the time. All right. We're seeing some improvement suddenly. The cache is going up, 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 up. Are we through it? It looks like we're back up and running. So after all of that, how about that for whatever that was, trying to get us between point A and point B. So let's see, by the way, let's step through and see if we can get through this last question that we asked about port numbers. So do you know the answer? Let's see if you do. So those of you that stuck around, we'll do this next port number question. Let's start with control the desktop of a remote Windows laptop. Control the desktop of a remote Windows laptop. That would be Remote Desktop Protocol, RDP. So TCP 3389 is what we would use for that. Very common to use that. So I think for someone doing a remote control in Windows, it should just always be RDP. That's what you would use. So that's what my choice would be as well. Hopefully that's the one you decided with on yours. Next on the list is automatically assign IP addresses to network devices. And for that one of the ones that we would use is DHCP, which uses both UDP port 67 and UDP port 68. If we want to copy a file to a Windows file share, then we would want to use SMB, the server message block, and that uses TCP over port 445. Lastly, next to last, we have gather performance metrics from a file server. This is an interesting one because we're not transferring files, we're not doing anything else on that machine, but we are gathering statistics. We're trying to determine if that machine is running properly. And normally you would be in management or handling a management protocol like the simple network management protocol to be able to do that. So SNMP is what we would choose. That uses UDP port 161. And then lastly, insecurely connect to a remote console. We would use Telnet port 23, TCP port 23, the insecurely connect to a remote console. Obviously, if we were connecting securely, it would be over an encrypted tunnel or an encrypted connection. And if you had an encrypted connection to a remote console, you would be using SSH, which would be TCP port 22. A little bit different than an insecure connection. Hopefully, you're not doing any insecure connections to a remote console with Telnet. It's a very specific use for Telnet these days. Commonly, you would use Telnet to see if a port is open. Maybe there are some legacy applications or legacy devices to be able to do that. So you might still have to use Telnet for those, but pretty much everything you're going to use will be using SSH these days. So those are the 5 options. Controlling the desktop of a remote Windows laptop is using RDP, the remote desktop protocol, using TCP port 3389. Automatically assign IP addresses is the dynamic host configuration protocol, UDP port 67 and UDP port 68 uses 2 of those. Copying a file to a Windows share uses SMB, the server message block, using TCP 445. Gathering performance statistics uses SNMP, the simple network management protocol, and that uses UDP port 161. And lastly, we want to insecurely connect to a remote console. Why would you do that? I don't know. Sometimes you have to. And you would use Telnet for that using TCP port 23. Those are the 5 different scenarios and 6 different port numbers that you would use for that. Hopefully you're familiar with those, but if you're not, make sure you go check out our video on common network ports. That's on our 220.11.01 version of our videos, and it's section 2.1 for common network ports is what we're looking for. In this case, insecurely connecting means connecting without any encryption. Whenever you see secure or insecure, especially when it's related to network traffic, that's really what most people are referring to, is whether you are encrypting that data or not encrypting that data. So that's where you would focus for those. Hopefully you got some of those right. If not, make sure you go check all of those. You want to do that for the different options, the different things that you're using. Let's change our focus from performance-based questions. Let's go back to multiple choice-based questions. So multiple choice-based questions like this one asks, a device communicates over a DB9 interface. Which of the following would be the most likely use of this connection? Would it be disk redundancy, device configuration, video output, high-speed file transfer, or memory parity? So you've got some different options there. The question again asks, a device communicates over a DB9 interface. Which of the following would be the most likely use of this connection? Is it disk redundancy, device configuration, video output, high-speed file transfer, or memory parity? If you think you know the answer, lock in your answer by visiting professormesser.com/QA. There's your link. Make sure you know where that is. As always, we want to make sure that you've got everything on the screen that you need to be able to do this. We're going to make sure you've got all the right specifics, all the right details on this one so that you know exactly which one to choose. One of the real keys with these questions from CompTIA is they will very often ask you questions and expect you to understand abbreviations, expect you to understand context without having the abbreviations or the context spelled out in the question. So make sure that you're familiar with this. You could get a question that has a lot of different abbreviations in it, and you need to know what those abbreviations are. In this case, you have to know what communicates over a DB9 interface. That's what we're looking for. So lock in your answer. A lot of you have already put your answers in. I see those numbers. Always watch that results number to see how quickly. So I feel like that one happened pretty fast. So I'm wondering if we really knew what it is or if maybe we don't know what it is. Maybe a lot of us chose a different one. So that's where that particular connection comes from. A device communicates over DB9. Which of the following would be the most likely use of this connection? Let's see how you answered this one. The possible answers, again, are disk redundancy, device configuration, video output, high-speed file transfer, or memory parity. How did you answer? Let's find out. You said it's almost a tie. 46% of you say video output is what we would choose with a DB9. 40% of you, 40, say device configuration is what it would be. And then everything drops off to single digits at that point. 9% of you say high-speed file transfer, 4% of you say disk redundancy, and 1% of you say memory parity. So you've got a few things, at least two things to choose from if you're working through them. One is device configuration. The other is video output. And if you're using a DB9, DB9 is a serial interface. Sometimes you'll see it written more appropriately as a DE9, Delta Echo 9, which is actually what it's called. It's really called a DE9. But in the industry, we call it a DB9 because there was an earlier type of interface called a DB25 that was 25-pin. When the 9-pin version of these serial connectors came out, most people just called it the DB, not realizing that it was actually DE. So there's a little trivia for you there. I think on the exam, pretty much everybody uses DB9, so I don't think you really have to know that they're similar. You probably will never even run into anything specifically saying DE9 in your job and your exploits and the things that you do. Normally, we are sending serial communication over this. The signal that we're sending over DB9 connections is an RS-232. So sometimes you'll see those two terms used interchangeably, although that's not entirely accurate, but that's just sort of the shorthand. Hey, could you hand me the RS-232 cable? And they're really saying, hand me a cable with a DB9 connector on the end of it. That's where that comes from. It's a standard. It's been around, I want to say forever, since 1969, which is pretty much forever. It's when we landed on the moon. So it's been around for a while. Did we use the DB9? Or at least serial connections, RS-232, to go to the moon? I'm not sure. These days, though, because it is a well-used, well-understood, well-standardized set of cables and signals, it's really useful to be able to have this for configuration. So you can plug into a switch, plug into a router, plug into a firewall, and configure that device, assuming that it has a DB9 connector on it for a console port. You'll also find a lot of different kinds of console ports. DB9 is just one of them. Sometimes, especially in newer equipment, you'll simply find a USB connection. So that makes it really easy because almost everybody has USB cables in their bag. But some of the older equipment might be a DB9 connection. It might be an RJ45 connection with rollover. It might be an RJ45 connection with a null modem connection. There's a lot of different things. But for the exam, you just need to know about the DB9 connector, and you need to understand that it's commonly today, the serial connector is commonly used for configuration of infrastructure devices. So if we look at the answers you gave, although 45% of you said video output, you were probably thinking of the DB15 that you would have for VGA. Again, technically DE15. But DB9, the 9-pin connector, is commonly associated with serial connections. So you'll see device configuration is indeed what we were looking for. 40% of you chose device configuration. That is the right answer. Well done. That is the one we were looking for, and that's the one that would be the right answer. It would not be high-speed file transfer either. DB9, the serial connections over DB9 are remarkably slow in today's terms. And to have to do file transfers over that, if it's a very large file, it's going to take you a long time. It could take you hours to send a file, but usually very small files you can transfer relatively quickly, but we don't generally use DB9 for file transfers at all, especially not these days. Back in the day, perhaps, but not anymore. 4% of you said disk redundancy. We almost never choose to connect disks using DB9. In fact, I can't think of an instance where the high-speed throughput required for a drive, DB9 just isn't appropriate. It wouldn't work. So that's not what we would use either. So definitely not disk redundancy. We would never connect a disk to a DB9 interface. And then lastly, memory parity. DB9 has nothing to do with memory. That's just a port at the end of a cable. So that's not the one that you would want either. The one that only makes sense in this list is the device configuration. If you chose B, device configuration, got this one absolutely right. Well done. So hopefully that can kind of help you figure out what we were trying to find. The DB15, did I say DB11 earlier? DB15 is the VGA connector. That's 15-pin connector, but 9-pin connector is what we'd use for serial ports. So that's what we would choose for that question. Let's do another question. Let's now keep moving with another multiple choice question. This question asks, which of the following would describe the logical separation of devices in different broadcast domains? Would that be VPN, LDAP, VLAN, MAN, or WLAN? Which of the following would describe the logical separation of devices in different broadcast domains? Would it be VPN, LDAP, VLAN, MAN, or WLAN? It's got to be one of those, but it's all abbreviations. It's another one where you have to do that multiple step process. If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Can you believe we made it through a question and did not get disconnected on the network? Maybe the internet's going to be nice to us. I did move over to a backup YouTube server. YouTube, when you're streaming, has the option for a primary and a secondary connection. And I switched over to the secondary, which initially didn't solve any problems. So I don't think that really fixed anything. But very soon after that, everything started working. I think that was more coincidental for that to be there. So that's the situation that we find ourselves in. So now we're just crossing our fingers. Can't see it here, but my fingers are just perpetually crossed to make sure that this connection stays up and running. I think that's all you have to do these days is cross your fingers. I think that really solves most technical problems. So we're going to go with that and see if that really fixes what we were trying to do. VGA, yes, is a DE15, but we call it, again, DB15. I don't know why. Well, I do know why, but it's a long story. We can step through that in the after show if you'd like and have all of those there. So hopefully that can help you as you step through this. Whenever I start going into the details of trying to determine where the best type of connection might be, it can be a challenge. But right now, YouTube's working pretty good, so we're going to keep it going there. It looks pretty good to me too. No, you don't have to pay for any YouTube streaming server. So the primary and secondary functionality is already there. If you do streaming on YouTube today, you already have that option. You already have the option to do any of that. So hopefully that can help you as well. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, which of the following would describe the logical separation of devices in different broadcast domains? Would that be VPN, LDAP, VLAN, MAN, or WLAN? What did you put down? Let's see what you chose. 62% of you chose VLAN is what you chose, but we've got effectively a three-way tie for second place, and it's between VPN, LDAP, and WLAN. And then lastly, MAN came in at 3%. Hardly anybody said MAN, dude. You didn't choose MAN. So let's see what the right answer would be if you're working and trying to separate out inside of a single switch these different broadcast domains. We refer to those not as LANs, but as virtual LANs, virtual local area networks. It's a way to have a single chassis, like the one we see here, which is a network switch with 24 ports or so on it. And instead of having multiple switches to provide the separation, we can tell the switch, keep everything on VLAN 1 separate from everything on VLAN 2. In this design, we're showing this as colors, but let's say red is VLAN 1 and blue is VLAN 2. So this is how we can separate out both of those, but still have them in the same physical device. Anything that's on the blue network cannot communicate directly to anything that's on the red network, and vice versa. That is the real beauty of VLANs and being able to work with them. So if you're ever in a case where you want to provide more security or simply separate things out into more reasonable and controllable and manageable areas of the network, VLANs is an exceptionally good way to do it. It's a very common way to do it as well. VLANs, I find, are perhaps in some ways not used enough. I've been in some environments where people will really take advantage of the VLANs, and it makes perfect sense to be able to do that. I think that's a good one to be able to work through. VLANs is what we were hoping to see. And indeed, 62% of you said, yes, that's what I would use. I would use VLANs. That is what separates the network into different broadcast domains. Now, could you have gotten multiple switches and put multiple switches in the rack and had the different broadcast domains separated across multiple switches? You could, but then you have to buy multiple switches. Why not buy one switch and still have the same separation, but you're doing the separation logically within that switch? And you get to design it. If you want to have everybody on their own VLAN, you can do that. That would be a little bit of a management nightmare, but you can do that. This is one where I think if you're someone who's working through the ideas of how do I find the best way to separate this network into different areas and to manage that and to perhaps control it and even make it more secure, VLANs is your right answer. A number of you chose LDAP. 13% of you chose LDAP, the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, which is great for organizing devices and having a central database of users and devices and other information, but LDAP has nothing to do with separating devices into separate broadcast domains. LDAP is simply a database, and it's a protocol that is used to query that database that we are using. 11% of you chose VPN, a virtual private network, which of course is a way to communicate across the network in a secure form because everything is encrypted. But VPNs don't separate devices into different broadcast domains either. We've got WLAN, got also 11%, a wireless local area network, which is sort of an old way to describe a cellular or remote mobile network connection is WLAN. So it's a local area network with the wireless piece on it, and the wireless in this case is referring to a cellular provider and being able to send information and data over that cellular provider's network. And then lastly, only 3% chose MAN, dude. The metropolitan area network. It describes a network that is localized to a particular city or a particular relatively small geographical area. So if you have a bunch of locations and they're all in the same city or maybe the same county, the same geographic area, that would probably be all connected to each other over a metropolitan area network, or a MAN, dude. That's what you would use, bro, dog. There, thank you, Let's Play. That's what I needed was more of a thesaurus on how to really approach a metropolitan area network. That is the right answer. VLAN is the right answer, the one we were looking for. 63% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well, as you can already see in what we've gone through already, there is a lot to go through for A+. A lot to know, a lot to memorize, a lot of abbreviations, a lot of concepts, a lot of things that may not come naturally to you. So one of the things I always tell people is you should probably go through every video, make notes on everything that's there, become familiar with all of the information that's in every single one of those videos if you want to be successful. But of course, there are 137 videos, 19 hours of content across both of these courses. That's a lot of videos and a lot of content. Not everybody has time to go through all of those. So I took everything from all the videos and got them in one place, and I put them into my course notes. This is the PDF version of my course notes. It is how many pages? 57 pages. That's a lot of pages for the information that's from these videos, but I tried to put all the important text, all the important graphics, all the important pictures. They are in my course notes. This is a way for you to take everything that's in the video and have it one central repository. It doesn't replace you watching the videos. It doesn't replace you reading a book or doing labs or even working through practice questions, but it is a great way to have everything at your fingertips. And if you've already gone through the videos, you've already gone through books, you've already done your studies, now you need to summarize everything and study from a single set of consolidated high-quality notes. You'll find it in my course notes. You want to learn more about that? Go to professormesser.com/1101 notes, 1101 notes, or simply follow the links at the top of the Professor Messer website. You'll be able to find those course notes listed in the links that are in all of those menus. That should help you as well. Hopefully that is something you're familiar with. If not, I would love for you to try those out and see what you think of those. That might help you with your studies. Back to the questions. Let's do another one. This next question asks, what Windows directory is used when installing 64-bit applications? Is it \program files x64, \windows \system32, \program files, \windows \apps, or \program files x86? So we have 5 different options to choose from. Let's see if we happen to know what these are. If you think you know the answer, there's a link on your screen. Follow that link to professormesser.com/QA to answer your question. As always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're going to see if we happen to know what this one is. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. And I think most of us these days are running 64-bit operating systems, but not everyone is. So make sure you're familiar with this. It is a part of the CompTIA exam objectives to know what this one happens to be. So we'll have to figure out this. I think if you have to step through all of these to be able to understand what these might be, and you do have to read through every single one of those answers to really know what we're looking for here. So be sure you step through all of them, read all of them, and get familiar with it. See what it happens to be. I think that might be a place to go. If you're ever working through these questions, reading through every single one of them might help. There might be some you can immediately discard, which is obviously in the multiple choice questions going to help you quite a bit, because the more you can discard, the better chance you get this question right, or even guessing to get the question right. And guessing and getting a question right, is it better than getting it right based on what you know? It might be. It might be. Those free questions. It's that horrible feeling. Of course, at the end of the exam, you never know if you got a question right or not, because it doesn't give you the results of every individual question on the exam. It gives you a very broad overview of what you may have gotten right and what you may have gotten wrong. It doesn't give you any details. So let's see if you know the details of this one. This question asked, what Windows directory is used when installing 64-bit applications? Would it be \program files x64, \windows \system32, \program files, \windows \apps, or \program files x86? Let's see how you answered. If we look at the results, we're a little torn on this one as well. We can see that 39% of you chose \program files. 27% chose \program files x64, and 22% of you chose \program files x86. And then we have a two-way tie for 4th place, almost a two-way tie for 3rd place, if you look at it that way. For 6% apiece chose Windows System 32 and Windows apps. So if you ever get into the details of this and start working through the specifics, knowing where applications are stored is pretty important. And of course, Windows, you could have Windows installed as a 32-bit operating system or a 64-bit operating system. Could be either one of those. We often refer to 32-bit technologies as x86. This comes from the earlier version of the Intel CPUs, which was an 8086, 8286, 8386, which if you go back and look at some of the history of Intel and what they were doing in this place, that's why we call it x86, because those were 32-bit CPUs. Intel obviously has moved on as the years have moved on as well. And the latest CPUs, or the latest broad set of CPUs from Intel, are the 64-bit CPUs. And the 64-bit we refer to as an x64. So a little bit different. Why don't we use x32 and x64? Because we don't. Because that's not the way we planned it, but that's the way it turned out. One of the things about operating systems, and especially if you're running in these different operating systems, if you have a 32-bit operating system, you cannot run a 64-bit application. It simply will not work. If you have a 64-bit operating system, you can run either 64-bit apps or 32-bit apps. So when you've installed a 64-bit OS, you have a little more flexibility. Obviously, the 64-bit applications tend to be a little bit more effective, a little more efficient for the operating system, but sometimes all you have is a 32-bit app, and you can run that 32-bit app just fine on a 64-bit operating system. When you look at the Windows structure, you'll notice that anything that is program files x86, if you're running in a 64-bit operating system, that's where it puts all of those 32-bit apps. So you can visually see these are the 32-bit apps, these are the 64-bit apps. So you've got some of the options that's there to work with. If you're running a 64-bit app, Windows simply puts it in program files. It doesn't have anything extra on the end of that. Again, more confusing. If you're using program files x86, why don't you have in the 64-bit program files x64? They don't. There's no such thing as that. We don't use that as the area, the range, the name of that program files directory. It's simply program files. So if we go back and look at the answers we had before, we have 37% of you, not a majority, but the plurality of you did choose /program files. /program files is the right answer for 64-bit applications. The 29% of you chose program files x64, which is there are not many occasions where I will put an answer into the live stream that doesn't exist, but that is one that does not exist. There is no such thing as program files x64. So that doesn't even count. So if we combine this, though, the 37% and the 29% of you, I think we got over 50, but that x64 is just something that does not exist. If that wasn't there, I suspect you probably would have chosen C, and that would have been the right answer. 22% of you chose program files x86, and as we've already seen, x86, that particular directory is for 32-bit apps, not 64-bit apps. So hopefully that gives you some context there. And 6% apiece knew Windows System 32 and Windows Apps are, well, although Windows System 32 is a legitimate directory, that's not where we store our applications, and Windows Apps is not a directory that exists either. So in this particular question, there were two answers here that just did not exist. I made them up out of the air, out of the ether itself. So you really only had three options to choose from. Hopefully that's something, if you see this listed in your program files directory right now, you'll be able to see them very easily what they are. Maybe you'll be able to look at those later and be able to see where those 64-bit applications might be. I know we're at the top of the hour, but we had such problems with the network. Let's go on for another question. We'll see what happens after that. We'll do a little bit of overtime, well-deserved overtime in your case. So for everybody that's stuck in there, let's do some more questions. Next one that's on our list is this question that asks, an organization maintains both a private cloud infrastructure and a public cloud instance. Which of the following would best describe this deployment type? Would it be SaaS, community, metered, VDI, or hybrid? An organization maintains both a private cloud infrastructure and a public cloud instance. Which of the following would best describe this deployment type? Would it be SaaS, community, metered, VDI, or hybrid? If you think you know the answer, of course, as always, please don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what this is. This would be a good one to look through and figure out what different options are. I will tell you, I don't give hints on these, but I'm giving you a hint on this one. All five of these are real things. So unlike the last question where two of them never existed, all five of these are real. So if you're looking through this list, maybe you even know the answer already, but you're looking through the list and trying to figure out what does that mean? What are the different things we would use to be able to have that? Well, that's where you really start looking at these. So if you're going through this and any one of these looks odd or you don't really remember what it means, make a note. You want to go back and look at that whenever you are working through those and seeing what's there. So hopefully that will give you some context on this. I think somebody in the chat room was talking about super chats not working. I'm not seeing any super chats come through. That's not true. I saw one come through earlier, and it's a good time to mention it. For Sovereign X, it looks like, says, hey, Prof, recently got Security Plus after getting Network Plus and A Plus thanks to your material. Wanted to find out if you can recommend anything for Cloud Plus. I can't. I've not seen anything for Cloud Plus, so I can't, unfortunately, recommend anything. I want to congratulate you on the Security Plus, Network Plus, and A Plus. Nice to have all three of those in the bank. Thank you also for the £5 super chat. But I don't tend to go outside the scope of what we're doing to have that there. So hopefully that can give you some context. I just don't tend to look at them. So we'll figure out what those different options might be. See if Cloud Plus, there's probably somebody, if you go to our Discord, probably someone has taken some Cloud Plus. They may be able to give you some options there. So I would recommend you go ask some of those and see what that happens to be. As always, I'll just mention this before we look at the answers. Everybody make sure you put your answers in on the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock that in. Sorry, I just didn't have an answer, Sovereign. I apologize. I'm just trying to make sure I get A Plus Network and Security Plus good. Eventually, maybe I can branch out and start looking at what some other folks are doing with these other certifications. Let's see the answers on this one. This question asks, an organization maintains both a private cloud infrastructure and a public cloud instance. Which of the following would best describe this deployment type? Would it be SaaS, community, metered, VDI, or hybrid? What did you answer? What would it be? And you can see that in this case, well, you've got my course notes. In this case, we could see 82% of you have chosen this one, which is hybrid. 82%. That's a pretty big number, 82%. It drops off pretty quick after that, obviously. 11% say SaaS, 5% said community, and then 1% said metered and 1% said VDI. So if we go with 82%, that is a pretty big number. If you'd only had a cloud-based infrastructure in your private data center, nobody else had access to it, it was yours to use exclusively, we would refer to that as a private cloud deployment. If you were using Azure or AWS, and that was your cloud-based infrastructure, and you didn't have your own data center, you didn't have anything else, well then having a public cloud deployment is what you would be using, because anybody can access those because they're on Amazon's network, they're on Azure's network. You at least have the option to have everyone in the world have access to your cloud infrastructure, which for many organizations is an important part of having a public cloud. Now, if you have a combination of your own private data center with your own private cloud infrastructure, but you also have some applications running in a public cloud, we would refer to that as a hybrid cloud connection, a hybrid cloud deployment model. And indeed, that's pretty common on larger environments where you've got your own internal apps that are running on your own internal cloud, but you might have other apps that are customer-facing, the public-facing. You might have those running on Amazon or Rackspace or Azure or any of the other cloud providers. That would be a hybrid cloud infrastructure. And indeed, that is the right answer. Hybrid, 82% of you knew that was the right answer. That's the one we were looking for. Software as a service is a type of software implementation into that cloud. And software as a service is one that describes software that's all ready to go that's in the cloud. In this case, we were trying to find a difference between a private and public cloud and using them both at the same time. And SaaS does not describe that particular infrastructure. 5% of you said community. A community cloud is a single cloud that multiple organizations use. So they might pool their resources together, and they might be organizations that might have the same goals or same objectives, and they can all share from the same cloud-based infrastructure. But that could be a private or public infrastructure or a combination of those. So you could have a hybrid community cloud if you wanted to. So there are options there as well. And lastly, a metered cloud is one where you are measuring the amount of use on that cloud. And a VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure, is one where your desktops live in the cloud. So in this particular case, with these answers provided to you, the only answer that makes any sense is indeed the answer E, a hybrid cloud. That's what we were looking for, and that would be the correct answer for this particular question. 82% of you got that one absolutely right. So let's do another question. For those of you, I know we're a little gun shy from our earlier outage. Things have been solid for the network so far, so we're going to keep it going and be able to see what's there. Let's do another question. I know we're at the top of the hour. I know we're over time, but we had such problems earlier with the network that let's absolutely do another question that we have next on our list. What, you want a printer question? Absolutely, let's do a printer question. This is a printer question that asks, a network laser printer is working fine for most users, but the output for one person is garbled and not readable. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it a faulty network cable, a damaged photosensitive drum, an incorrect driver, a non-working fuser, or a faulty cleaning process? A network laser printer is working fine for most users, but the output for one person is garbled and is not readable. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it faulty network cable, damaged photosensitive drum, incorrect driver, non-working fuser, or faulty cleaning process? Time to do your troubleshooting for printers for today. So some of you are, I can tell by the chat room, people love printers. I mean, almost globally, internationally, almost without fault, everyone just loves printers. And so they're constantly telling me, oh, let's do more printers. I wish we had an all printer study group. I wish we could just hug our printers and just love them all day and pet them nicely and sing to them. Everyone loves their printer. So that's, of course, I want to provide you with a printer question because you love them so much. So we'll have to see if this is a question that fits for you. And indeed, this is kind of the challenge we have, is that printers are physical devices. They break a lot because they're physical, but they also have this enormous, complex software component associated with them, and many different steps, many things that have to happen from the time you hit print until the time that output shows up on the printer. So there's lots of places where things can go wrong. I will tell you, for those of you that are just always worried about working with printers, you should embrace these. You should figure out and study every step along the way. You should study the part on the person's computer, understand what happens across the network, understand what happens when it gets to the print server, understand how to manage the print server, and then understand the details of that printer. The more you know about these, you'll suddenly realize they're not as complex as you might think. They're not as overwhelming as you may have thought from the beginning. Once you start breaking it down into its individual components, not really that hard to troubleshoot, as it turns out. And in fact, if you can be the one person in your organization that knows how to troubleshoot these well and troubleshoot them quickly, you'll find yourself having much more value to the organization and ultimately give you leverage for doing whatever you want to do next in your career. Let's see what you think this answer is. The question again asked, a network laser printer is working fine for most users, but the output for one person is garbled and is not readable. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Would it be a faulty network cable, a damaged photosensitive drum, an incorrect driver, a non-working fuser, or a faulty cleaning process? All bad things. All things we don't want to have happen. If we look at the results, 71% of you, though, say it's a bad driver. It's an incorrect driver is the answer you chose. 17% said a faulty network cable. I'll tell you in a moment why that is not the right answer. And then we have effectively a three-way tie for third place with damaged photosensitive drum at 6%, and then non-working fuser and faulty cleaning process is 4%. So this is your challenge. This is a garbled print. There it is. That's pretty garbled. There's nothing in this output that looks anything that we would expect. In fact, we can't make out anything from here. Are there even words in this one? I'm going to look closely. No, there's just a bunch of garbage. It's just, oh, you can't even tell what this was supposed to be. It certainly does not represent the output that someone was sending from their computer. So that's a little bit of a problem when you run into these problems with garbled print. Commonly, this means that the printer is speaking one particular kind of printer language. So it might be speaking, your printer might be a PCL printer, or it might be a PostScript printer. There are other printer languages as well, but those tend to be the more popular ones. But let's say you have a PostScript printer and you send it PCL. You're going to get an output like this. You might have a PCL printer and you send it PostScript. You'll get a similar kind of output, although it may be something a little more readable, but it certainly won't be the output you were expecting. You might want to try that sometime. If you have a PCL printer, like an HP laser printer, you might want to try sending it PostScript code. Pretty interesting what you will find if you do that. Don't send it too much. It could go for hundreds of pages if you do this. So I'm giving you a warning. Stop it after the first page or two. It doesn't get better from there. So you want to make sure the printer is working properly. If you think it might be the printer, because there's still a chance that it could be a bad printer. Your printer might be broken. You could have the printer run its own internal test page. So you're not plugging into the network. You're not using a printer driver. Just say, printer, print a test page for your own printer and see if it works. And if that looks great, then you can work your way back and figure out where the problem might be. Sometimes an application might be bad. It might be sending the wrong information. That's kind of unusual, but it does happen. So you may have to upgrade the app for this. Almost always, though, it's something to do with the driver that's in there. So you've got a PostScript driver and you're sending it to a PCL printer, or you've got a PCL driver and vice versa. That's one that does become a challenge. And just for people in the chat room that have mentioned this, there are some printers that can speak either PCL or PostScript. Are relatively unusual, though. You don't often find that. So that's the case we have here, is that this garbled print is most likely an incorrect driver. That's the issue we ran into. And of course, 71% of you did choose that one. And we did lose the network. The chat room is telling me. So close. Oh, so close to having that there. So we're going to wait a second for it to come back. Don't worry. We'll wait and see what happens to have this there. But at least we got through the question. At least we got there. So I feel like, I see it came back pretty quick that time. So at least we got through there. Hey, everybody, we came back. We came back pretty quick. But we'll see what happens with YouTube. They're not having a good time today. And that's the challenge you have with the live stream is those are always you're always going to run into that kind of issue. Hopefully that gives you some perspective on printer problems, though, that might help you if you're ever trying to work through those. So I have to say, well, you can see the number of you chose faulty network cable. 16% of you chose faulty network cable. The reason that would not create corruption in the output is that there's already error checking on the network. And if a device receives a packet on the network that is garbled or corrupted, it throws the packet out. So if there's a network issue, it's never going to let that bad data get to the application. It's going to drop it on the network side. So that's why a faulty network cable would not be causing the problems that we saw with the garbled screen or garbled page that came off of the printer. We also have 6% of damaged photosensitive drum. Usually that will just leave a single line down the page. That is not the case here. The case here is that it was all garbled. Couldn't read anything, so that would not be related to a damaged photosensitive drum in most cases. We also have a non-working fuser that would cause all of the toner to be smeared right off the page. So that's not the issue we were running into. And lastly, a faulty cleaning process would usually leave speckles or some other type of information that would be sort of on the page, but still everything on the page is relatively readable. In our case, Couldn't read anything. There was nothing there. It was all garbled. That certainly speaks to an incorrect driver or a printer that's set to the wrong printer language for the people using it. In this case, because everyone is working okay except one person, it's probably the printer driver on that individual workstation. So hopefully that can give you perspective on where you should work with solving these problems. Let's do one more question. This question is going to come from my practice exams book. For those of you not familiar with this, I have a big problem with practice exams on the internet. I find that they are lacking in context. Sometimes they are outdated, and sometimes they're just bad questions with even worse answers. So I thought, if those aren't good questions, let me write questions myself that are really designed to mirror or simulate actual exam questions, at least give you the same feel and the same style that CompTIA uses on the actual exam. And so I wrote a set of questions and published them as my practice exams book. This is a 389-page book. Here's the book. Here's the physical version of the book. It's a big book. There are a lot of questions near 3 separate exams, including performance-based questions, and they are 3 full exams with 90 questions in all of those. So let's take you through an example of what one of these might look like. I have my practice exams book up right here. I've got a question up as A7. A7 asks, a system administrator has connected an external USB drive to a computer to transfer some documents. When booting the computer, the system tries to boot from the external drive and gives an error message. Which of the following would be the best way to prevent the USB drive from booting? Would it be modify the BIOS to boot from the internal hard drive, modify the boot order in the Windows Disk Management, rebuild the MBR on the external hard drive, or disable the external drive in Device Manager? Now, if we just wanted the answer, this is a PDF. It's a digital version, so we can simply click Quick Answer, or we might want the details. So I'm going to click the details, which slides me down to the page with the detailed answer on it. So it's a little bit interactive there, where it gives the question again and tells me the answer is A, modify the BIOS to boot from the internal hard drive. And one of the things that you'll often find is that there's an explanation as to why that's the right answer. And one of the things that frustrates me is I never get the answer right, and it doesn't tell me why I got it wrong. So in my book, I go through every incorrect answer, and I give you a detailed reason as to why this answer is the incorrect version. So I would absolutely encourage you, even if you get the question right, make sure you read through the incorrect answers, because questions on your exam may be topics that are on the incorrect answers from mine. It's just another way to give you that full feedback of questions and answers that you can go through and learn a little more. And if you've gone through this question, you realize, I don't know what you're talking about in the question itself, at the very bottom, I have a QR code and a link that will take you to the video that explains the information the question was built on. So if you're not familiar with the topic at hand, you can go get familiar with it and then step through the questions and answers again, and you'll be more familiar with the overall technologies associated with this question on this practice exam. And if I hit the back button in my PDF reader, I go back to where we started. I can keep going through these questions over and over. I have both digital versions in PDF. I also have a physical version, which is a printed book that I can ship to you. If you purchase the printed version, you get the digital version for free. So you can download the digital version immediately while you're waiting on the physical version to be shipped for you. You can find out more about that on my website, professormesser.com/core1pe. That'll take you right to the page, or simply use the links on the pull down to have a look at the practice exams. We have both Core 1 and Core 2 practice exams available, something you might want to look at on the Professor Messer website. I've talked about the exam objectives as we were going through the study group today, and I highly, highly recommend you go to professormesser.com/objectives so that you can download your own set. It should be the first thing you download when you start your studies, because it tells you everything you need to know to be able to work on your exam. Here's a copy of the objectives right here, and I'm just going to simply flip through them. It tells you in a bulleted form, let's do 2 pages. Look at all these bullets. It tells you everything you need to know. If you know everything in these exam objectives, you're going to pass your exam with no problem. And so that's why I tell people, make sure you go back and look through every single bullet before you register to take your exam, because this will tell you if you really studied the right things. You'll know immediately if that's something, and it's free. Can't beat that. Go to professormesser.com/objectives to have a link that goes over to the CompTIA website, or simply go to your favorite search engine, type in CompTIA Exam Objectives. It'll be the first link. You'll be able to find that. It's a free service from CompTIA and something that would be the first thing you study. And it's a great checklist before you go into the exam itself. We do one of these study groups every month. This is our first study group of February. We do another A+ study group. Our Core 2 study group is on Thursday, 2 days from now. Make sure you come back if you're studying for your Core 2. In March, we also have plans to do our study groups on March the 7th and March the 9th for A+, Core 1 and Core 2 respectively. And March is an odd month for scheduling. The following week, we have both our Network Plus and Security Plus on the 14th and the 16th. So a little bit different schedule for March, but make sure you're familiar with that. That should be something that can help you as we step through all the things you need to know. Make sure you're familiar with the calendar is always there at professormesser.com/calendar. And on our Discord, there's a separate events channel on the Discord that can help you as well. Well, we're not done yet. We're struggling with our network up and down today, YouTube's problems, but that's okay. We're still having an after show. Be able to check out our vouchers available on our website at professormesser.com/vouchers. You should never pay full price for your voucher. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers and get a voucher that's already discounted. You don't need a discount code. You don't need an extension in your browser. You don't have to jump through any hoops. Just get a discount, save some money immediately and get a discounted voucher. Also, my practice exams and course notes are out on my website. Go to professormesser.com/1101success. And of course, you can always follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. If you like this video, if you had a good time, if you got some questions right, if you got some questions wrong, we'd love it if you hit your thumbs up. Let us know that what we're doing here can help you with your studies as well. Well, stick around. We've still got our after show to go through. Well, I'll take questions from the chat room. Thank you for being here. Thanks for putting up with whatever this craziness is with our network today. We appreciate your patience with this, and thank you for sticking around. We'll answer some questions on the other side. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group. Okay. The Discord is at professormesser.com/discord. Probably could have figured that one out. Let me get some things straightened up on my side, and we can take questions from the chat room, which is something I would love to do. So let me get these straightened out here so I can keep track of the stream health, which today full of error messages. And I can, of course, we're going to take questions from the chat. The chat is available if you go to professormesser.com/live. If you're there now, there's a chat on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, there is a chat on the screen. Both of those are effectively the same chat. So I'll take questions from the chat room. I'll be glad to step through those and be able to know what those are. Let's look at first. There were some super chats that came through. I would love to step through a number of these. Nathaniel says, I just want to thank you for all your content. I went from working in restaurants with little to almost no experience just 6 months ago to passing my A+ and breaking into tech thanks to you. Life changing. Well, it's all up from here. That's one of those where I see this all the time, where people are working certain types of jobs and they move into IT because they're able to really change the way they're living. And it does help. IT, and one of the benefits, one of the reasons I do this is because there's really no ceiling. If you want to make more money, if you want to have more flexibility in your job, if you want to have a different type of career, IT gives you all of those opportunities. You just have to put in the time and the effort to make that happen. And thank you so much, Nathaniel, for the $10 super chat. But perhaps even more importantly, and I would even say more valuable to me, is learning of your experiences you had going through this. So congratulations in getting out of the restaurant, getting into IT. It is an amazing experience you're going to have. It's all fun from here. So hopefully that's something that helps you. And thanks again for the super chat. Let's also take a super chat from Blake, $10 super chat, who says, got my A+ a few weeks back. Just accepted a job at an entry-level networking position. Just wanted to say thanks for all the help. Well, I did a very little bit of that. You're the one that had to do the heavy lifting on that one. Congratulations on your A+. And I love that you got a job. Entry-level networking position is a great place to be. That's one where you're going to learn a lot. You'll be overloaded. You'll be overwhelmed right out of the gate. Perfectly normal. That's the way it should be. In fact, in IT, you pretty much are always learning. So I tell people that get their first job in IT, if you come home the first day and you say, I didn't understand any of that, or I understood very little of that, that's perfectly normal. That's the way it's supposed to work. There's always something to learn and always some fun to have. And so that's why I say that's absolutely what you should focus on too. So thank you, Blake, for the super chat. Congratulations on your A+, and perhaps even more importantly, congratulations on the networking position that you have now been offered. That's fantastic. So let's take some more questions from the chat room. We did, with all of the outages we had, I didn't give you a CEU. So let's do that now. I know it's not in the first hour and a half. Although once you watch this on the replay, there's probably a huge section that will be cut out. So I will tell you, if you're studying this for continuing education unit credit, one of the things that you can do to earn an hour of a webinar category CEU is to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put February 2023 Core 1 A+ study group or something similar to that. And then in the body of the message on a line by itself, please put I'm not going to tell you what it is because I can see, thank you chat room, that we're doing it again, that we're losing all of this again. So I'm going to wait for it to come back, see how the numbers are decreasing and decreasing and decreasing. So who knows what's going on today and being able to work through it. This is an ongoing challenge. You know, we had a little bit of a challenge with this with Network Plus last month where we had to reschedule the whole thing. And then Security Plus a week after that was great. So it's really about uptime and availability. So we'll have to see what we think it might be. This is really a challenge, but let's wait it out and see what happens. It's odd, isn't it, that I've got network connectivity enough to do chat, but the video piece is not working as expected. That I find interesting. So we'll have to see and being able to work through this. And of course, I didn't give you the super secret code word of the month. So we will do that whole thing from one side to the other and make that happen. So one moment, please, as we step through this. I think if trying this work, trying to make all of these things work the way we would expect is not always the easy part. Interesting enough, because we're getting sort of some information is getting to YouTube, other information is not. What you'll find is instead of it being real time, it gets collapsed into just a couple seconds and then it keeps running in the replay. So we'll see if that works. I don't know that that's really, I guess some of it is getting through. So some of you are saying, hey, we can see you. But it's always a challenge in getting that data there. The cache number, though, is what we're looking at. And because it keeps increasing, we know that things are not working yet. So this is the challenge we run into. Some of you are asking about the physical books. There's a tab at the top of the price list where you can switch between the digital edition and the physical edition. And what's going on there. Cache continues to drop, which means the network continues to be bad. We're just going to try to wait it out. There's nothing we can do but wait it out. And then we'll take questions from the chat room. So we'll figure out the details. I should find out what that last question was. I think I've got a question on here. There we go. Last question, we were dealing with a garbled printer. So I think I'll choose that option on here. Have that one. So let's see, our number is the cache continues to drop. The network continues to be in bad shape. We still do not have good connectivity. We're still waiting for the network to recover. It really is YouTube to recover. Hopefully they'll get there. And who knows? It may be that YouTube is having problems with their servers. They might be having issues on their network. Someone may be performing denial of service attacks. You just never know what you may be running into. So let's try again. I'm going to switch back to the primary and being able to work through it. So we'll give it another moment. It may be that we don't do an after show today just because of that, but I think we'll have to figure out what it's doing as we go through this. So now we wait, watching the chat, and I'll let everyone know I've moved back to the YouTube primary streaming servers. No change. So, oh well. We'll have to wait and see what happens with this. I suspect it's something on the YouTube side. They probably are turning it all off and back on again. We'll have to see how that works. But you can see the number continues to decrease. 11%, 12%. So such a challenge. I'll answer some of these questions about the books and what we're getting there, but I don't see much of a change occurring on the network. We're just waiting. And it's fluctuating a bit. It goes 15%, 16%, 16%, 15%. So something is getting through, just not much of what we need to get through. So a little bit of a challenge. Such a shame. It was going so well there, but we did get through the primary content. So I feel pretty good about that. It's the after show. I don't want to miss the after show. That's sometimes the best part, if you can believe that. There's such good questions that come in. So I'm gonna wait. We're gonna wait a little more so that we can get questions answered. We will give it some additional time and see if it comes back. And right now it's kind of a slow burn. Oh, look, it's going back up. Have we resolved things? We're going to find out. No, we have not. Just a small bump. Just went to 18, 17, 18, 18, 17. It's trying. It's trying desperately. So we'll have to see. You're right. It's almost steady. Right now it's steady at a bad place. It's at 18, 19% cash, and it keeps flipping between 17 and 19. So something is getting through, and then it doesn't anymore. And then something gets through, and then it doesn't anymore. So it does have a problem. We'll have to see if we can get some of this. I don't want to start answering questions because I still don't think it is doing what it should be. And there it comes back. And we're back. Hi, everybody. Where you been? We've been here waiting for you. I don't know where it took you so long, but we're back. You can see, for those of you watching, we're back 3%. It was sort of a lower number. It didn't crash completely, but it did go way down with the lags. Now you can really see it visually as it adjusts the context. But looks like we're back now. Hi, everybody. So before we left, I was giving you instructions on how to earn a webinar category CEU. And the way that you would do that is you would go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. On the Professor Messer website, you would click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, you would put your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put the February 2023 Core 1A Plus study group. And then in the body of the message, put the super secret code word of the month, garbled print. Your super secret code word of the month is garbled print. See, it's that one right there. So you're getting to see a little behind the scenes there. Garbled print is the super secret code word of the month. Send that to me. It takes me about a week to turn these around or so. And I will send you an email that has been digitally signed that says that you must have been here to put up with all of this nonsense because you knew what the super secret code word of the month happened to be. So that might help you. That is the super secret code word of the month that will get you the CEU, and we got it out before anything else happened to the network. Okay, now let's go through some of the questions that other people are asking. I want to thank BT, who just purchased my book today. Apparently, BT, you got the digital version. You're thinking, hey, it might be good to get the physical version. To do that, simply open up a help desk ticket on my website, and I will send you a link and instructions for a discounted version of the physical book that discounts the digital version that you already purchased. So you're not having to buy things twice. It'll just discount the cost of the physical edition. So you can do that by opening up a help desk ticket from your member login, and I'll be glad to send you a link and instructions on how to do exactly that. Let's keep going with the different questions that you have. If anybody's left, I should probably go look at my stream and see, did anybody stick around? Is anybody still here? Yes, you are. And I will tell you, looking at the stream today, very different than streams in the past. Let me see if I can give you a picture of what this looks like, because it is an interesting, that's concurrent viewers. Let me give you a perspective of views. No. Chat rate. No. Yeah, I'll just give you viewers. So that will give you some information. And I'm going to kind of give you a summary of what happened there. So as we were dealing with all of these problems, I can probably put this in preview and give you a perspective of this. Let me make it full screen so we can really see. This is today. Now, normally this would be, we go up, 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 and then suddenly we continue to go up, and it's kind of a line all the way down as people are here. But you can see we had that first outage. Oh, that was painful. And then we slowly came back, and then we had another dip. And then finally people are saying, I'm out of here. This is ridiculous. And who can blame you? Really, I appreciate anybody that stuck around after all that craziness, because that was a bit of a challenge. So that's at least the thing we were looking for. I will continue to take questions, though. So if you want to put questions into the chat, I will be glad to put those in there. I want to thank JZ for the super chat, $9.99 super chat. JZ, thank you for your music. He says, thank you for everything you do, Professor. I'm currently studying for the 1101 exam, plan to take my first test this month. Your videos are the best. Well, I think so too, but I appreciate you watching them. You got a lot of options out there for getting your training, and every little bit of this helps so much. So thank you so much for your support with that. This is, whenever I try to find the right information and make it as specific and on target as possible. It's an ongoing challenge. So thank you for your support and continuing to do that. I will take questions from the chat room, though. You're welcome to put questions in if you are on ProfessorMesser.com/live. There's a chat that's embedded in the page. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a chat that is the YouTube chat. That's the one I'm watching. So feel free to put any questions in there, and we can figure out what the right answer might be. I like this idea of folks that are taking their courses in college. I think that would be a great way to go through A+, Network+, or Security+, or really any certification training, because you're able to do it in a classroom environment. There's other people you can bounce ideas off of and questions, and you usually have equipment, lots of equipment that you can use, and operating systems that are provided by the college. What a great way to learn the information you need for A+. So I love that that's something that you're working towards. That can only help if you're going through those. Other questions, I want to make sure I didn't miss any of the super chats that went through. So let's have a look at others that are there. This is sort of an ongoing and many flavored question. This question asks, are there plans to do CySa+? Many of you know I have A+, Network+, and Security+ currently on my site. And I always talk about there's got to be something else I should do. And there are plans to do another course. I just don't know what it is yet. So that's the real challenge, is knowing what should I do next. CySa is certainly a good option, but I've not decided yet what it happens to be. It's one of those where I'll just tell you, stay tuned. We'll figure out what it happens to be, and we'll go from there. Let's see. This sort of goes into the same question we had before with a college course. Is Adam asks, what are your thoughts on people cramming this exam in only a few weeks? There are a number of people that have come to my site. They spent a couple of weeks working with the content on my site. Then they go out and they take the exam and pass. And it took them 2 weeks tops. Almost always, almost without any question, these are people that already have a very strong foundation in the technology. They've already worked with servers. They've already worked with operating systems. They've already worked with the hardware. They're already familiar with a lot of this content. And so what they really are doing is making sure they know everything kind of between the lines. That's pretty common, but it's not common for the most people that don't have that industry knowledge. I would say on average, it takes people around 2 to 3 months to learn everything they need to know to finally take the exam. That's a pretty big number, 2 to 3 months. And then you have to do the second A+ exam is another 2 to 3 months. So I would say that it's unusual and remarkably aggressive to do a single exam in 2 weeks. But if you already have a bulk of the knowledge, that's perfectly reasonable. So that's what I would tell most of you. Don't worry about the time frame. Just work through it at your own pace. It'll work out. Everybody is at different pace. It usually takes me 6 months to go through an industry exam just because of the amount of time I have to study and the things that I want to do with it. I really like to learn the content on a certification exam. So that's one, at least if you start looking through it, how I focus on that. This is a pretty good one. Joseph asks, any tips for taking the test online? I have a lot of tips for taking the test online. I would say the first thing you should do is go out to the subreddit for CompTIA on reddit.com/r/CompTIA and read what other people's experiences have been taking the exam online. There are some very common places where people get tripped up. There are some very common places where things happen unexpectedly to people that had they known this could happen would not have been a problem. So a lot of this is just expectation and doing your research prior to taking an online exam. I will still say that the exam experience at a testing center is far better than the testing experience for doing something online and at home. But if you do the proper preparation and you set the proper expectations for what could happen at home, for instance, you could have a network outage. I know, hardly ever happens. When could that occur? But if you do have a network outage, that's certainly going to affect your online exam. There's also different rules certainly rules that you should make sure you are aware of when you're at home. For example, a lot of people don't realize that when you're in a testing center, you can't talk. You can't say the questions out loud in a testing center. It's against the rules. Well, guess what? At home, you also can't say the questions out loud. So those same rules apply. The testing at home should have the same secure experience as the testing at a testing center. So you can't have things on your desk. You can't have writing utensils. You can't have reference materials. You can't have pencils or sheets of paper. So it's a little bit different than a testing center. I would encourage you, if you're taking it at home, read through the experiences of other people and then read through the rules and regulations for taking an exam at home. On the CompTIA website, they have extensive information, bullets of how things should be handled, can answer your frequently asked questions about, can I have this? Can I have that? They have all of that on there. So I still think taking a test at a testing center is the better option, but sometimes the testing center is not available or it's so far away that taking a test at home is really your best choice. And if it's your best choice, then you should set expectations properly. For example, if you're at home, they're watching you on a camera. Well, that means if you're at home, you can't slide off the camera and look over here. If I was to do this on my exam, they would immediately stop the exam and fail me, or at least stop the exam as far as I got. They would say, nope, you went out of the camera range, so we're not going to allow that. If you are looking somewhere else in the room, hey, look at that over there. They're going to immediately stop the exam and you're going to fail it. You have to buy another voucher. Nobody wants that. If somebody walks in the room and walks behind you, failed. These are things you have to watch out for, things that could happen at home. So make sure you're prepared for the possibilities of those things occurring. And if you do that, I think if you're prepared for it, you're not surprised by it. And so reading the experiences of other people can be very, very valuable to make that happen. Another question, do I record videos every day? No, thankfully. No, I'm not, and I don't think you're interested in me vlogging, right? Well, I got up again this morning and had breakfast and had some coffee, and then I sat down and I read the paper. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants me to flip through this paper, and I flip through that paper online, and I don't actually flip through a paper. Nobody does that anymore, do they? I guess some people do. But there's certain places I go online, I check things out. We have things I process in the morning. Usually, though, I'm creating different content, whether that content is video or content online. I'm creating new pop quiz questions every day. We've got live stream content. All of this content has to be created at some point. It usually takes half a day just to create the content for a single live stream. So for this week, we have 2 live streams. That's a day of time that was dedicated to building that content and getting it ready to go. So although I don't record videos every day, there's always some type of content that's being created. Sometimes it's a book, sometimes it's a video, but it's usually something that works towards getting you the information you need to be able to pass these exams. I think that's the important part too. There was a good one that came through. I want to make sure I focus on this because this was a pretty good one. This one was, the hard part for me is remembering processor information or RAM types and sizes. The sizes of RAM? None of those, thankfully, are in the exam objectives. So you don't need to know processor information. You kind of have to know the difference between an Intel-based CPU and an AMD-based CPU, but that's sort of it. You don't have to know specific CPU types. You don't have to know specific CPU specifications. You don't have to know CPU motherboard connections and the different types of sockets that could be used. You don't need to know any of those. They're not on the exam. And I see people all the time studying those. If it's not in the exam objectives, it's not going to show up on your exam. Or perhaps even said better, if you know everything in the exam objectives, you will easily pass your exam. That I can say 100%. So even if they were to ask you a question that came off the exam objectives, maybe one question, they don't tend to do that though. They tend to stick directly to the objectives, which means if you know everything on the objectives, you're going to pass your exam, no problem. So that's what I would do. This is another one. Let's talk about this. Any tips for the Security+ exam? Same tips apply. Getting the exam objectives, getting a good book, watching the videos, getting some hands-on, going through some practice exams, and taking the exam. It's the same process every single time. The follow-up to this one, Nancy asked, do you know when the next version for Security+ will be released? We're not expecting the current version of Security+ to be retired until well into 2024. So you've got, I would say you almost have a year and a half, maybe more, probably a year and 3/4 before this version of Security+ ever goes away. So you're fine there. Don't worry about another version showing up and forcing you down a particular road. Not going to happen, at least not in the current time as we sit here in February of 2023. Not an issue. Not a problem at all. So you're pretty good with Security+. The 601 will be around for a very, very, very long time. Other questions? Let's keep this thing going. Let's see what else we have. So other people are asking, hey, I mentioned Discord earlier. Where is that? Where's the Discord? Our Discord server for ProfessorMesser.com can be found easily by going to ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. You could also find it on the Professor Messer website. Let me bring up the ProfessorMesser.com website. Let me bring this tab over and let you see it. So if you go to my website, this should look familiar to some of you. There it is, Professor Messer website, and all the links that we have here. At the very top of the screen, oh, you can't see it because my big head's in the way. Let's move me out of the way. There we go. So at the top of the screen, right here are the links to our social media. This last button is the Discord button. So that will take you over to Discord, and I don't know why it says default label. I put the actual labels in there. So I need to do more work on my website, apparently. There's always more work to do. But that last button is the Discord button that will take you there. So if you don't want to type in professormesser.com/Discord, that will take you there. That will get you everywhere you need to be. So hopefully you'll be able to join us. There's some great people in the Discord. Doesn't matter what exam you're studying for. There is plenty to make that happen. The testing centers, there are benefits to going to a testing center. Let's Play says, well, there's a barbecue restaurant right next to my testing center. I think I'd always go to the testing center if there was barbecue next to it. Although where I live, there's pretty much a barbecue restaurant next to anywhere. So maybe that actually there is one very close to the testing center I go to here. So it's a block away. So yeah, I can go for that. I'm fine with that idea. I think that's a great idea. And working through it. Did you have much experience working with MDMs in your IT career? I did. In fact, I worked with a company that had their own MDM. At the time, it was Network Associates. Ultimately turned back into Network General. We had an MDM, and then the company got bought, and we ended up not having an MDM anymore. There is some MDM capabilities in some products that we used at Palo Alto Networks, which is extremely useful. So I worked with an MDM there, which is pretty good. So that's why. Yeah, absolutely have, and they work like a champ. They usually use the IMEI, so you can focus on an individual physical device, and then you can manage the aspects of that device. Most of the MDMs today do a very good job of just laying it out and making it very easy for you to use. You notice when I said that the exams will be retired is different than discontinued or expired. It is. And the reason is that although versions of the exam can change every 3 to 3.5 years, the exams don't go away. So if CompTIA was to say, we're discontinuing A+, people might think, oh, it's going away forever. Instead, they say, we're retiring this version and bringing a new version in. Gives people the more accurate representation that they're simply updating the exam. They also don't use the term expire. The exam is not expiring, and that's probably because when you earn your certification, it has a 3-year expiration. So they want to make sure people know the difference between an exam that you would take and a certification you already have earned and that you own. So certifications expire. The exams are retired. So you just remember that, and I think you're fine. That's why they use those particular terms. So that's why I think they use those particular terms. I don't know for sure, but you can ask CompTIA maybe, and they'll tell you, or I'll ask CompTIA if you're really, really, really interested. I'll be glad to tell them. I have an individual at CompTIA that is my partner representative, and I can go to him for anything I need. I can send him a text, send him an email, and he'll be able to help me out with those and work through them. Some people are even asking in the chat room, so how do I even find a testing center? How do I know if in-person testing is what I could be using? What if online is my only option? Fortunately, there is a search function on the CompTIA website where you can search for a testing center near you. You put in your address anywhere in the world, and it will tell you where all the testing centers are in your particular area. So that's another option you might have. There were some questions earlier when I mentioned my when I mentioned the vouchers that are on my site. One of the questions that folks had was, I mentioned that the vouchers are available for people that are physically located in the United States, Canada, or a number of U.S. territories, including Puerto Rico, Guam, the Virgin Islands, and some others. And people have said, well, what if I'm in another country? If you're in another country, you will need to get vouchers that are specific to your particular country. And you'll probably need to purchase them directly from CompTIA or from a CompTIA partner who has vouchers available for that particular country. It is a bit of a challenge to do that on my site right now. I'm trying to find a good way to make that work, because if you're buying it in the EU, you're purchasing it in euro. If you're buying it in the UK, you're purchasing it with pounds. If you're buying it in Australia, you're buying it with Australian dollars. So how do I take that currency and somehow get it to the US, there's tax implications, there's financial transactions that have to occur and conversions of different currencies that have to occur. It's not a simple thing to do from a business perspective anyway. So I would like to offer vouchers to everyone in the world, but it's just not incredibly practical to do it at the moment. But we are thinking of other ways that we can make that happen. And maybe we just have an account that does everything in pounds, and we have an account that does everything in Canadian dollars. We have another account that does everything in Australian dollars, and et cetera. So we don't know. We don't know what that will look like yet. But that gives you at least an idea of what we're thinking about and going in there. So let's see what other questions people have on the certifications or anything else. I'll answer whatever question. Well, I won't answer every question, but I'll answer most questions that people might have. And of course, the one thing people are mentioning, okay, what if people bought in Bitcoin? The problem isn't the way people are purchasing, it's that certain vouchers must be purchased a certain way from that particular country, and it's usually in the fiat of that particular country's monetary method. So, for cryptocurrency to work here, it's sort of across the board needs to be cryptocurrency enabled, and unfortunately, not everyone is. That's sort of, we'll get to that tipping point eventually, I think. But right now, that's just not the way it's, that's just not an option we can use. Sadly, sort of the way it always works through. Let's see other questions. So I mentioned this, I have a video, and it's in the YouTube video description of this video. You can find it, just go down in the YouTube video description, where I have a video on how to get a job in IT with no experience. And in there, I describe the different elements that are important when you go to try to get a job. And I break out those 4 elements as a formal education, industry certifications, some type of professional experience, or really not even professional experience, just experience, some technical experience, because you may not be paid. You might be volunteering to get that experience. And then lastly, you know someone who works there. You have a relationship with someone who's already part of that company. Those are the 4 things that if you add all 4 of those would be ideal when walking into a job, when walking into a job or an interview for a job, more specifically. So people sometimes will try to compare or conflate both a formal degree and an industry certification. And they will often say, well, I don't want to go get a formal degree. How many industry certifications do I need to match a formal degree? And the answer is there isn't one. There is no way to transfer between those two things, nor should there be. A formal degree provides you with a certain set of skills and a certain type of representation of how you're able to learn and the things that you have learned. An industry certification is a completely different qualification that does not in any way match or tend to replace the information or the knowledge you've gained from a formal education. So I tell people, yes, you need a formal education. You also need industry certifications, and these are not interchangeable. They are different types of credentials, and they perform a different function. So I tell people, don't think you're going to get out of getting an AA or a bachelor's degree by simply taking a bunch of A+, Network+, Security+, and other certifications. Doesn't work that way. Employers would like you to have a formal education in most cases, and employers would like you to have an industry or set of industry certifications in most cases. That's, of course, not always the case, and you should look at the job posting to see what is this employer looking for. Are they stressing certifications? Are they stressing formal education? Are they stressing both of those? And then you'll need to make the decision on what that is best for you. You could, of course, walk into a job and say, well, I don't have a formal education, but I got all these industry certifications and some experience, and I know someone who works here, and they might hire you. So this is not an all or nothing scenario. You can still get a job with less than all 4 of those elements in place. It's just easier if you have all 4 in most cases. What will probably happen, though, if you have 3 of the 4, they'll offer you a less, or maybe it's difficult to negotiate a higher salary when you don't have all 4 of those in place. You're missing one. You're missing a formal education. That makes it a little more difficult to negotiate. You can't say, yes, but I have all this knowledge that I've accumulated in this 4-year degree, and the 4-year degrees in cybersecurity have been taught by some of the top cybersecurity experts in the country who are at this university that I went to. You can talk about what the advantages are of that formal degree you got, and I think that means I should make another $2 an hour, or I think I should bring up my salary to this amount. But if you don't have that, that's not something you can use when you're negotiating. So that's the challenge. You have to find exactly the right scenario for those. And I think that people fall into that trap of thinking they can replace a certification with a formal education or vice versa, but you really can't. You really need both, in my opinion. Other questions. Let's keep going down the list. How are we doing on time? I think we have a little bit more we can go through, especially given, can you believe the network is still running? Don't say anything. Don't do that. Let's Play says, do I teach at any university? No, I do not. In fact, it's very difficult, at least in the United States, to find a university that teaches anything related to IT. What? What are you talking about? IT is a multi-billion-dollar, tens of billions of dollars industry per year. What do you mean universities don't teach IT? They don't. Across the board, very few universities teach anything related to IT. They teach computer science, absolutely. You need to know how to program, they'll teach you. You need to learn how to build hardware and then write code to run the hardware, they'll teach you that. You need to understand networking, you need to understand operating systems, you need to understand security, you need to understand firewalls and how to protect data. They don't teach that. Almost across the board, very few, I would say maybe 10% of the four-year universities out there teach that. There's lots of reasons why, none of them good, but they just don't. They don't consider it to be something, I think, that is worth their while. I think they feel it's more like, if you could teach this yourself, is it really something a university should be bothering with? That seems so beneath them to teach IT. And of course, the people that took computer science when I went to college and the people that are in IT now, they're working at different levels right now within the industry. Now, there's plenty of jobs out there for computer science. If you want to be a programmer, you want to write applications, you want to do coding all day, there's plenty of jobs for that. It's not saying that computer science is not a good use of your time, because for people that like to code, it's a perfect thing you should be doing. And there are degrees out there for that. But for the rest of us that like to, once the application is built, it needs to be deployed, it needs to be installed, it needs to be supported, it needs to be troubleshot. The applications and the data, and it needs to be secure, and it needs to be accessible from anywhere in the world. That's IT's job. And so without a formal degree in IT, how are you supposed to do that? Well, today we do it through maybe getting a formal education in some other similar scope, but we tend to do that through industry certifications. So that's why I don't teach at a university. First, they don't pay great. If you're an IT person, universities are not going to pay you very well, relatively speaking. You know, when I was working as for an IT company, I was working for an IT organization. I've worked for many IT organizations through the years. And, you know, in the last half of my career, I was making 6 figures and up. In rare years, even multiple 6 figures. The money is there for IT to be able to have a very nice salary that I could never duplicate by working at a university. You'd really just have to love teaching to go do that, because you're going to take a hit on the amount of money you would make. But maybe that's very short-sighted on my part. I look forward to your cards and letters. I've mentioned in other study groups that I'm very coin-operated. I was in the business to make as much money as I could by doing that. That's what I was trying to do. And obviously there's a balance there between the benefits you get and the other parts of that. But I liked the jobs that paid well. And so I probably would never consider other types of jobs outside of IT because I just like that flexibility. I like the financial flexibility and the financial stability that information technology brings. So that's why that's probably the biggest reason that it just never appealed to me. So that's the idea behind that. And whether that's good or bad, I don't know. Maybe universities should change what they're doing. But I've been waiting for universities to kind of change their idea of how they teach and what they teach for a very long time. I've just kind of given up on them at this point. I don't think that's the case. How about some good stories? We'll get one here from Brad, who says, just passed Security+ last week. I can say your material/practice tests were the #1 factor in me passing. I would say the #1 factor in you passing was your studying, if I may be so bold. More than happy to have the videos available to you, to have the practice exams and the course notes. I'm glad they're available and something people can use. Congratulations on your Network Plus. I'm always proud to be at least a little bit involved in that process of the things you were doing. Congratulations on your Security+. What's next? What are you going to do? Did you get Security+ for a reason? A lot of people come to my site and get Security+ because they're getting a job in the federal government. In the U.S., federal government often asks for Security+, especially for the DoD jobs, and sometimes outside the scope of DoD. So that's the idea I approach this with. And sometimes you're getting a Security+ because there are other positions out there that would like you to have Security+. Plus, it's a great certification to have. Everybody has to deal with security in the workplace, no matter what you're doing in IT, and having knowledge in security can only help you. In fact, those are kind of the better paid jobs out there in IT, at least right now. Security and cloud tends to be very well paid, but there's still some great jobs and well-paying jobs in every scope of IT. It's not just any one particular IT position or IT scope, if you will. So when I talk about a formal education, this is mentioned in my video of how to get a job in IT with no experience. Do I mean a BA or BS? It's a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science in computer science/IT specifically. Again, IT certification, formal IT education, relatively difficult to find on any public 4-year university, or just a BS, BA, or higher in anything. I mean in anything. So most employers understand that there are very few public universities, 4-year public universities, providing an IT diploma. They might have some IT classes, but not a major in IT. You don't have a BS in IT or BA in IT, depending on how they plan to structure that. CS, computer science, sure, unless you mean cybersecurity here. And of course, cybersecurity doesn't mean anything, so it's hard to understand exactly what that would mean. But usually you mean, if you put it in this context, it's usually computer science. Computer science could be one, but again, computer science is teaching you about programming. That's a pretty difficult set of skills to acquire that you will never use in the IT side, if IT is where you're going. In IT, we don't do programming. We don't. We don't build applications. We don't build hardware. We don't write drivers for the hardware. We don't build firmware for the hardware. We don't do that in IT. That's for the computer science people. But in IT, we do scripting. That's if I had to categorize it. You know, technically, I realize that is coding. That technically that is programming. I look forward to your cards and letters again. But I consider scripting to be incredibly important in IT, but it's not programming and it's not computer science. Just ask a computer science person, they'll tell you that very quickly. It doesn't build applications. It's not there to build mobile apps. It doesn't build a web-based app. It's really for you to automate. And automation in IT is incredibly important. You will be doing automation in IT for your entire career. So it's important to know PowerShell. It's important to know Python. And it's important to know anything else that you can use to automate or script things. So that's why I tell people that's where you want to focus if you're moving into IT, is understanding PowerShell or understanding Python. Now, if you go look at computer science degrees, they're talking about nuances of programming in C++, understanding how to build applications for mobile devices, building hardware, and then writing the firmware for that hardware. That's all computer science, and you'll never do that in IT. And if you are doing that in IT, you're not in IT anymore. You're in computer science side. You're on the programming side. That's just how it works. And now it would be nice, and I think employers would love it if they could get an IT person who was able to do programming. But the reality is there's so much to learn. You could spend a lifetime becoming a master in programming and doing nothing but that. In fact, you would need to be full-time in programming to be a master of it. You also need to be full-time in IT to learn the things you need to learn and be a master of the skills you need in IT. Well, how am I supposed to take 2 lifetimes and kind of cram them together? You can't. You have to pick one or the other because the scope is so broad. And as much as employers would love to have IT people that know how to program, those two things are not compatible with each other, and they won't ever be, realistically. In any realistic time frame anyway, they're not going to be the same thing. That's the challenge. And that's why I tell people, pick one. You want to be a programmer or do you want to be in IT? You can't do both. And you can't do both well is really the implication there. So some people are saying, well, do I have Python videos? I do not. Do I have PowerShell videos? I do not. Would those be good videos to make? They'd be great to make. See, I've got them. They're on the list. It's not like I haven't thought of this already. I've got a big list, but now I have to figure out what goes at the top of the list. And it's a moving target, constantly a moving target. So one day I wake up and I think, today's the day we're going to commit to a Python course. And then I wait until the day's halfway over and I think, you know what, actually, PowerShell is what I should do. And then I wake up the next day, no, I need to do something in the cloud. I need to do something with Cisco. I need to do a Microsoft course. I need to do something Linux related. And there it is. There's the problem. So it's all about figuring it out and figuring out the details. So I think that's the one. That is the idea, is you need to find what that's going to be. And I'm not going to know what that course is going to be until I actually sit down and start the course. And once I start the course, then it's very different. Then it becomes a lot better. If I ever try to figure it out now, there's no, even if I told you this is what I'm going to do, well, it's going to change tomorrow anyway. So it's not going to happen. That's the challenge we always have. It's all about time motion study for us. How much time do we have to build a course, and can we do that and really build a course that's good? Ultimately, that's our challenge. Because it takes about 6 months to build a course from scratch. That's a long time to commit. And at the same time, there's newer versions of Security+, Network+, and A+ through the years. I mean, we've done 3, 4, 5. We've done 4 different Security+ versions through the years. We've done 5 different Network+ versions. I think 6 different A+ versions. So they change through the years. So you always have to update those as well, because everybody needs a course that's really written specifically for what you are working towards. That's the challenge. It's all about time. It's that fire, which I burn constantly. And so I don't mean this flippantly, but I am honest when I say this. So when Himanshu asks, what should a beginner do in programming? I don't know. Got me. Beats me. I don't do programming. I don't plan on doing programming. If you're in IT, you're not going to do programming. So I don't know what beginners do in programming. Not my world. Not what I work on. And I'm not interested. I shouldn't say that too loudly. I did once own a company where I built applications. I programmed. I built code. If you want to call Visual Basic for Windows programming, I guess technically it is. I was building apps and selling them. But that's not something I like to spend my time doing. I'll put it that way. But there's things to do there, especially these days. You got mobile phones that have apps galore. There's opportunity out there for a programmer like there's never been. So I think that's what I would always tell people is go get that if that's what you want to do. But that's what you're going to do then, is you're going to be a programmer. You're not going to be involved in operating system management or troubleshooting. You're not going to be troubleshooting networks. You're not going to be taking packet captures. You're not going to be doing anything with security. You're going to be programming. That's the difference. So you just decide which one you want to do and go that direction. I just can't give you any guidance if you go to the programming side because that's not something I do. So sorry. I'm not knowledgeable in that area, not knowledgeable enough in that area to be able to give you good advice anyway. And not interested enough to start getting more interested in that area. So that's the challenge. I've mentioned this before in the study groups, and Let's Play brings it up again. So about speaking of other courses like Cisco and other ones you would work on, or even Network Plus to some degree, is Cisco's Packet Tracer application a good program to learn networking? It's probably not a good one to learn networking, but certainly learn Cisco management, Cisco switch management, Cisco router management. Certainly good to do that. And once you know the Cisco part of it, it then creates more of a sandbox that you can use to help you learn more about networking. Absolutely. There's some great features in Packet Tracer. You can visually build a network, put workstations on the end, put in switches and routers, configure the switches, configure the routers, and have data move back and forth between those all in a virtual sandbox. And Packet Tracer is free. Can't beat that. And at the same time, you're learning all the Cisco stuff. So that can be very valuable. Now, if you're going for your Cisco CCNA certification, Packet Tracer, you've got to have that. There's no question. Load it up. And that's how you would work through those. So I would highly recommend that if you're doing Cisco related. Not helpful for doing anything it's not really helpful for Network Plus. It's outside the scope of what Network Plus requires you to know. So for Network Plus, probably would not spend time working through anything relating to Packet Tracer unless you're already familiar with the Cisco side of things. And I would really not recommend getting real equipment either. I know a lot of people, and they're sitting down to do Cisco, want to have an actual Cisco switch or an actual live Cisco router that they can plug in and then plug all the cables in. Waste of your time, in my opinion. The Packet Tracer gives you everything you need to know to pass your CCNA, and you don't have to spend time programming it, plugging things in. You do it virtually on the screen. I mean, if you'd like to know how to plug in an RJ45 cable, go to your network card, unplug your RJ45 cable, plug it in again. That's how you plug a cable into a switch. That's it. That's all you get out of it. So don't waste your money on physical devices. You can pretty much do everything in Packet Tracer. Now, I will say there's maybe 5% of the CCNA exam that you really can't do in Packet Tracer. Well, in that particular case, maybe you would like to go outside the scope of that and maybe use real equipment for something like that. I could understand that, but it's only 5%. You could almost learn everything you need in a video or through someone else using the actual equipment. So that's what and if you're going beyond the scope of CCNA, you want to extend this into the CCNP and ultimately the CCIE, well, you probably will need physical equipment for that. But for the CCNA, Packet Tracer works great. If nothing else, do the Packet Tracer first. See how it works for you. It's free. And if at that point you realize, oh, I really want to touch a piece of equipment, then you can shell out the hundreds of dollars to be able to have that ability to touch something. But that's all it gets you. I will tell you that if you do ultimately get a job in networking, you're never going to touch the equipment. You're going to plug it in, put it in the rack, it goes in the data center, and you're never going to see it again. You will do everything with configuration and setup and ongoing maintenance from your desk, wherever that is. It might be in the same building. It might be in a different building. It might be in a different country. You almost do everything from the command line. And Packet Tracer is free. It's on the Cisco website. Just Google Cisco Packet Tracer. Take you right to the page. You do have to register. You have to maintain a username and password with Cisco to be able to use it. But that's minor. That's if that's the price, that's a good price in my mind. I have it installed on my machine because I love building up. Somebody will have a question about, can we do this? How would this particular dynamic routing protocol operate? When will we expect that to happen? Well, you build out a network. You send data across the network. You can stop time, kind of a bullet time scenario where you stop time on the network and you watch the packet as it goes each step. You go, okay, the next hop. All right, go to the next hop. And you can watch the packet as it's going through the network. It's great. And then you can do a protocol decode. It's got some great capabilities. Really nice program, and I highly recommend if you're someone doing the Cisco side of things, that will really help you. If you're doing Network Plus, it's not great for Network Plus, but it's great for taking you beyond Network Plus. Put it that way. Also want to wish Katrina good studies and best of luck. I'm really curious about this, though. Katrina says, I'm taking 1101 and 1102 both on this Friday. What are you doing? Are you have been in the industry for a while? Because that is a lot of information you need to know, and a lot that you're going to have to do to sit down to do both of those on the same day. If possible, if you're not well versed in the industry at this point, really would recommend doing one at a time. Learn everything you need to know about one of these, take that exam. Then go away and study for the second one, and then take that exam. But there are people that there's timing issues. There is the ability to get to a testing center. There's a lot of reasons why people want to do both on the same day. And if that's your case, that's perfectly reasonable. But it's probably not your highest percentage. But Katrina says, well, that's okay, because I've been in IT for 20 years. It's only a little bit crazy then. It's really not as crazy as you might think. After 20 years, we know operating systems. We're familiar with some aspects of the hardware. All you really have to do is fill in the blanks, and then you go take both of them. So I would say that's perfectly reasonable. Pretty much fits that scenario I mentioned earlier, that if you've already know the knowledge and you're just sort of filling in the gaps, you can do this in 2 weeks. And yeah, take both at the same time. That's fine. And work through them. The question for Katrina relating to that is, should I have a mouse to do this online? Can I use my trackball? You can absolutely use the trackball. Not an issue. So any input for that works fine as long as it is a supported operating system from the specifications on the CompTIA website for online exams, you're fine. Now, if it's at a testing center, obviously you have to use whatever they provide. So if they have mice, you have to use the mouse. I don't think a testing center is going to have a trackball. So, but if it's yours and you're using it on your desk, that's fine. They're fine with that. You're not going to find anybody complaining about that aspect of it. Let's keep going. And I think this is, I was having a conversation about this with someone else earlier in the week. I forget what we were talking about specifically, but the question asks from Let's Play, is my access point at home a switch and a router at the same time? Oh, it's better than that. It's a switch, it's a router, if it's cable modem, and really if it's a DSL even, it's a CSU DSU, it's a firewall. It probably has some type of filtering mechanism. So it's a content filter or a URL filter. It probably has other security features inside of it too. Maybe it's a DHCP server. Yep. Probably you access it through a web front end. So it's a web server. It probably even has other capabilities like an IPS, maybe looking for brute force attacks or other things. So it's an IPS. It depends on the capabilities of that particular device. Mine can also do QoS or packet shaping. So I can allow certain applications to have a higher priority. All in the same box. It's an all-in-one box. So you can't really call it a router. You can't really call it a firewall. You can't really call it a switch. It's really all of those. But we tend to call them routers. Oh, do you have a router? And it might have a wireless network. So it's a wireless access point. So it does everything. So people often say, oh, that's a wireless router. And what they mean, it's a wireless router and a switch, access point, firewall, all those things all combined in one single device. Now, in the world of high-end production networks, if you're in a large data center, then you probably have a firewall. That firewall is probably a next-generation firewall that does IPS, probably does some antivirus, may even have VPN concentrator capabilities, but it sort of ends there, maybe some content filtering. But if you need the ability to wireless access points, then many organizations will have a separate standalone wireless access point. If you need a router or switch, maybe a switch. Maybe your firewall is doing firewalling, your switch is doing switching. There was a kind of a term in the industry we would use that say, let the firewall be the firewall, let the router be the router. And in very large scale environments, that makes a lot of sense. So your firewall may not be doing anything layer 3 related. It may not be routing. But in many organizations, their firewall, at least the internet-facing firewall, is also doing some routing, probably network access on that, and probably some translation, some network translation too, so that you can have that single IP address to the outside. So it's a NAT box, it's a firewall, but that's sort of where it stops. And your device at home does a lot of things. Does it do any of them well? Maybe it does. Does it do all of them well? It does not. I guarantee you it does not do all of them well. In fact, one of the things you'll often find is your home-based Soho-ish routers that we use at home for cable modem or DSL is able to route from your single internal network on your local environment. Well, in my environment, I have multiple networks. So let's say in my studio, I have 2 separate networks. Let's say I have a 10.10 network and a 10.20 network. If I plug both of those into that router, I can't route between them. It can only handle one internal subnet. It's a limitation of the device. That's what I mean, that it does some things well, but it does most things not well. That's the capabilities that are just available on those devices. It's the way it works. If only, this is a great follow-up Let's Play, which is if 5G is faster than home access points, which it potentially could be as we sit here today, are access points going to disappear? Well, your cable connection might disappear. Your DSL might disappear. You will still need some type of firewall between you and the 5G network. And so I'm thinking if 5G suddenly appears in my neighborhood and it provides me with 1 gig throughput, if it provides me with 100 megabit throughput, that's a viable alternative for a backup streaming connection. Wouldn't have helped us today because the problems we saw today apparently, we don't know for sure, but did not appear to be local network related issues. So me using a different network connection would not help if the problems that we saw today were at YouTube. I would just be using a different network to access the problematic systems, and that doesn't help anybody. But what a great idea. What if we could get rid of cable modem, we get rid of DSL, use 5G wireless from your home, and that's your internet connection. Yeah, very possible, very feasible, but that's going to require a lot of infrastructure. To be able to get those speeds out of 5G, you've really got to have a tightly meshed, high-frequency 5G network in your local neighborhood. I don't mean like in your city. I mean on your street. It has to be somewhere close to you. So that's one of the challenges with 5G is that if you need those speeds, you'll probably get them best in a very densely populated area because the 5G providers can financially justify putting antennas all around Manhattan because there's so many people there that could be potential purchasers, subscribers to that 5G network and provide really high-speed connectivity. But if you are in a more rural area or a smaller city that's more spread out, think of all the antennas that you would have to put around to really get those kinds of speeds. It may not be worth the money for these organizations to do that. So you may not be able to get the maximum speed of 5G, but you might get somewhere in the middle, and it's up to you to decide whether that speed is enough for you. At the same time, we're seeing more and more fiber to your homes, and we're noticing that the fiber providers that used to be 1 gig was a synchronous 1 gig connection, both 1 gig up and download from your home. Now we're starting to see 2 and 5 gig connections to your home. And eventually it's going to be 10 gig. So as we're seeing the wireless technologies improve, we're also seeing the physical plant technologies improve as well, and indeed get rolled out a lot more because we can bring one fiber into the house and put television and phone and everything on it for the people that still want those particular services. And that's something that may or may not be available to you on a 5G environment, depending on where you happen to live. was kind of a long answer to a very simple question. I apologize, but hopefully that gives you some perspective. Here's one I think about all the time. I say this tongue in cheek, but not really. If a large solar storm sends out an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse across the entire Earth, destroying all electronics, is there another thing you'd like to do? Probably not. What would I do? Now, I've always said I want to work outside, because here we work inside. IT is generally associated with air conditioning, which is something I'm a real big fan of. And that type of controlled atmosphere, controlled temperature and environment is something I just love. So I say sort of, again, tongue in cheek, that I'd like to work outside, but I have worked outside before. My very first job was quite literally working in the fields. I lived in a very small town. Agriculture was a big part of what we did. And I get picked up in the morning, be thrown in the back of a pickup truck with my hoe, and they'd take us out to a dairy, drop us off in a field, and I'd work there during the day. And then at the end of the day, the truck would come back around, we hop in the back, and they drive us back home. And that was a normal day working in the fields. That was an actual job. That's work. People say, what do you do for work? I said, I don't. I have a job and I do IT. I'm not sure that's work at times. Now, that, to be fair, I don't know if you've seen some of the latest firewalls that are out there. Let's go to Palo Alto Networks real quick. And I did run into this problem when I was working at Palo Alto Networks as a systems engineer, because I was responsible for taking this equipment, getting it on site, and then doing something with it. And there were these firewalls designed for these enormous environments. They have a 7000 series, they call their Platinum Standard firewall, that is just enormous. Do we have the spec sheet here? We do. So I can zoom up on this and show it to you. This is what you would find in a sort of a carrier class firewall. So if you're wondering what the AT&Ts of the world, sorry about that, the AT&Ts of the world are using, they're using something like this. So these are chassis-based firewalls, multiple power systems, multiple and modular cooling systems, separate blades that can be installed and uninstalled, but they are enormous. Let's see what they weigh. Because that, for me, as a systems engineer who had to take these things around for evaluation, they would be drop shipped on just a huge truck would bring it and sort of drop it, and it would be brought into the data center. Does it have the size? These are firewalls that support on the high end, on the 7080, they support, with a mix of data, around 600 gigabits of throughput. These are big firewalls. These are massive, massive firewalls that can really support very, very large high-speed networks. Don't have to run into that. Are the weights in here? Am I missing it? Weight right here, standalone and as shipped. So when it ships, it's 300 pounds. 300 pounds for the 299.3 pounds for the AC version of this. So that's a big firewall. That's a lot of firewall to be working with. And so, yeah, you could run into that. You could find that. Absolutely. Fortunately, a lot of the firewalls we use in most environments are not going to be that big. They're going to be much smaller than that. So fortunately, thankfully, I didn't have to drag around a lot of those. Those were very specific environments. And in most places you'll find there are people dedicated, there are systems engineers and teams that are dedicated for a company that sells insurance or a company that is manufacturing. So that's why you usually have the vertical type group. So there may be somebody who handles government, because federal government is a science unto itself. Carriers, they're unto themselves. And then you have kind of everything. Sometimes you'll see even more specifications from there. That's pretty interesting, and being able to work through it. Other questions. Let's see before my goes out. Let's go through some other questions because we have another study group on Thursday. And we dropped out. Can you believe that? Sorry. I was trying to get one more question in. Well, for me. Now, for this, we're going to see if it comes because I'd love to just a chance to kind of work through here. Those of you that are following, grab this and kind of see what I see. Side, I'm thing with sort of the way that it goes. And I need to do a new preview. Here we go. This is the world I'm in right now. Error, no data. So this is how it's error, no data. Thanks for doing today. I'm hoping Thursday is going to go a little bit better. I think we deserve ourselves to have a better experience with this. We're going to work through these the best we can. Anyway, the best. I will try. We're going to wait for this to come back. Cash is already at 100%. I want to wait to sign off. Let's minutes. The switch. Not going to happen this here. Let's see if we get anything else. Cash still at 100%. 100%. Working on it. Really going to work. Fully qualified domain names are French. So we'll pick those are so that YouTube has a specific, well, here's a comment address. So let's do another. This tells me it's a YouTube comment. So we'll see if what these are. Sudo mtr address. And, well, that's interesting. Interesting. What I did was put in, I found just a random website. So, and we don't know how valid this is, but this random website gave me an IP address of one of the servers that YouTube uses. I got a chunk of that got lost. We start to see some of these numbers continue to go down. So we're seeing definitely some problem. Kind of gives me the idea that I need to have some of these on a ready to go. Pretty interesting though, to be able to, and immediately we've got data that's just not getting through. Actually, our video data. Picked a good IP address then, because I expect that's where we're seeing the issue. Oh, that's a shame. 66.7, 62. Do something, but I don't think it is. That we did finish, or I did get the ready to go. So for that particular, use that in the MTR. It's some representation of what we're seeing. Traffic, which means if it's a very busy environment, it'll drop. There's a network problem because the rest of the traffic is going through just fine. It might help us when we get to that. Not just change streaming rate in the mechanics in the middle of that is network. So the IP address that's showing all Google, according to who is Google. How about their point? It's at that hand falls apart. Something on the but no. are this packet loss here stuff that Google is related to the infrastructure. And who knows what's going on? It could by fail over to a separate network. I don't know, because I did not problem. I don't trace it when everything's working. So we're just going to have to wait what that turns out to be. It's trying to come back so hard. It's working on it, but it's quite unfortunate. And I think this one I don't want to end it abruptly. I'm going to give it a few more minutes. Just awful numbers on the YouTube side. Nothing. I don't think there's anything there to tell me. Down detect mentioned anything. Hour ago. Yeah, there's no. This whole time. But we got through, I think, about an hour and a half or so of that. It wasn't that it went so bad. Give it a send off. I was just going to be able to sort of put it in the can.